本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It's April 11th, 2023, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 557. I'm your host, Rob Zachney, and I'm joined by Ricardo Contreras.
Hello.
Patrick Klepek.
Hi.
And Renata Price.
I'm no longer a sickly Victorian child, mostly.
Strep is really common. It's not like it's actually like really bad this season. I've a lot of adults have gotten it.
Like a ton of people, but I will say most people are getting it through the child vector. Is like my understanding. Like,
it may be the original source, but it's like
Yeah.
adults are just as contagious as kids.
This
like
is from
once
me.
once they've got it.
This was my strep. I was patient zero. That streptococcal bacteria grew on my tonsils.
it's valid. We see it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Patrick came to us with some important item on the agenda today. Patrick has seen Natalie Watson's Mario movie.
Oh shit.
Patrick, lay it on us. First of all, what was the theater experience like? How did the kids handle it?
How
many children were
we surprised them for some reason on Friday. So usually the schools and the daycares line up the days they take off with like holidays that parents would have off, so it all works out for everyone. Not here. Just like it's a good Friday to take a day off is essentially. Also, like I think Easter Friday is one of the things that corporations have gotten away from giving people as a day off. I think maybe that exists in the floating holiday thing. But either way, I had my children and also tried to do some work. And I was like, you know what? The logical end state of kids home need to work, turn kids into content. Mario movie out. The math equation writes itself. And so we loaded them up. Our youngest had never been to a movie theater before, but the Mario trailer was banned within our household because if you started it, she would see that there were 3 others plus like the clips in the trailers app on the Apple TV, and we would just cycle through those. And every time it was because she just wanted to get to the moment where Toad says, "We're adorable," and she would just do that in front of the TV, and it was adorable. And then it was like 100 times, and it's like it's still adorable, but like slightly less than before.
Adorable, but starting to grate just a bit.
Yeah, like give me some time. It's adorable. Like 3 days from now, and then I want to see it again. So she'd never been to a theater. My oldest has been a handful of times, but is a big Mario fan. Plays a lot of Mario games on her Switch, and so we did. We knowing that I could see Natalie Watson's name in a movie theater, plus get my kids out of the house and have a legitimate reason to drink a beer at 2 p.m. while I waited while I showed up to the movie theater. I saw there was the bar, and I asked the attendant, I was like, is that, man, I don't know how to phrase this question without sounding disgusting, but I was like, can anyone serve me a beer? Because there appears to be no one there. Like, I guess we could call someone down. I was like, okay. I would like shuffle over to the beer so they could have the one person there that was authorized to serve it. What, Cado?
Is this the same place that does the specialty drinks?
Well, this is AMC's.
Okay.
AMC's in general do. They did not
have a. I was about to ask.
They did not have a Mario and Luigi. I believe. What was there? It might have been leftover.
Look,
from
you could even make it.
Or no.
You could make it like a Shirley Temple. Mario's
That's
red
true.
hat.
That's
Shirley
true.
Temple.
That's true. No, they had already put out the stuff for that vampire
Renfield.
Yeah, yeah, that one that's coming out this weekend.
I want to see that. I should say I want to see that. I saw Bram Stoker's Dracula for the first time like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, you were mentioning that. Yes.
And so like I was like, oh, I recognize who that is, who that would be in that story. It's Keanu Reeves' character. Exactly.
No Keanu Reeves in this movie, but yeah, we made it over to the theater and like managed to be one of those theaters where it's a smaller theater, doesn't have a ton of seats, but they all recline, and so We sat down, like we had two seats. Like we weren't able to get all in a row because at 1 p.m. on a Friday, on a day where lots of kids had it off because of schools and daycares being closed, everybody, like,
Right.
I thought for sure, I was like, oh, I can just, like, I'll just look up the tickets right before the showing and I'll just book them.
Oh,
and
no.
I happened to look the night before, and I'm glad I did, because all the showings were just getting slammed by parents having the most convenient thing in the world to do on a Friday with their kids. And so we had like two seats, and it worked out fine because my oldest is usually attached at the hip to me and my youngest is attached at the hip to my wife. And when I got the youngest down, set up with her giant bag of gummies that we told her to try and eat slowly, and then she ate before the trailers were over. And I was like, hey, there's this button you can press. What does the button do? I was like, well, press it. And like all of a sudden the seat starts reclining. And the way her eyes bulged, I said, you don't have to do this. Like, this is scary. And she leans back and goes, no, I like this. I'm like, well, don't get used to it. We don't have any recliners at home, but you have better seating at the movie theater. So yeah, we sat down and watched the Mario movie. It's totally fun. I think things like the Lego movie, Pixar films have suggested a world where kids' movies can be more than just sort of like the bright colored affair that they often are. And when Nintendo announced they were partnering with Illumination, I was like, man, I know exactly what this movie is going to be. I have seen these movies. They are totally fine in the like the pantheon of things you can watch as kids. Illumination stuff looks gorgeous, moves fast, and like makes you chuckle.
Real fast.
And I was like, that fits Mario to a T, and they're gonna knock this out of the park. And in terms of exactly what an Illumination Mario film would be, like, they knocked it out of the park. Like, it is a lot of fun. It's moving images. Chris Pratt is fine. Like, it's fine.
There's the poster quote for the extended run in theaters. It's moving images. What more do you want?
Sometimes they sing sounds to them.
Like, if you watch kids' films, you act like that is it is like a low bar to hit. You're fucking wrong. Like, to have delightful, colorful, moving images that are interesting for 90 minutes is not what most kids' fare is. It is Yes, it is insulting. Like, I'm saying, like, for me to sit there and enjoy myself, like, you are not going to get that from most kids' fare. Like, it is the most kids' fare is insulting and boring. Rob, go to the Netflix kids section one time.
No, okay, yeah, but hang on. Like, what I'm thinking, like movies, like the
but kids' movies don't exist anymore. They don't really. Kids' movies are rarer and rarer in the movie theater landscape. Like, they are mostly things that are premiering on streaming with lower budgets, like less ambition. And anyway, it's all to say, like, this movie was wildly entertaining. I had a blast. My kid was doing the Leonardo DiCaprio, I know what that is, like, pointing meme every 5 seconds, because it is a movie both filled with obvious references. I mean, there's a whole, everyone knows there's the Rainbow Road sequence, which is pulling from Mario Kart, which is very much pulling from the, like, Mario Kart Deluxe, which at this point I think might be the most influential Nintendo game of the last 10 years, but we just don't talk about it that much because it's less interesting to talk about a Mario Kart game. And, like, the way that, like, the characters Mario, Peach, and Toad, like, pick out their carts is straight up the UI of, like, from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, of, like, picking the structure and the thing on top of it. And go ahead, Renan.
That's cute. I'm now fascinated by something, Patrick. How do you, okay, you sit down, you say, I'm going to watch a movie with my children today. Or my children are going to watch a movie today, I'm going to be present for it. What does the order of operations look like for you when choosing a thing? Because I'm like I'm now really curious.
I mean, it's like most parents, you try to make suggestions and then work your way backwards from that. Like, hey, this, like, really interesting looking, like, there's, like, some decent fare on Netflix that are, like, movies that would have gone in theaters 10 years ago, but that's just not where those movies end up anymore. Some of them are still being made, and Netflix has the most prolific animation output of any service. So if you have a kid, you're subscribing to Disney Plus and Netflix. And sometimes there is stuff there that doesn't look like Barbie mermaids, like, made on, like, a computer in the 90s with voice acting that might not be AI, but it also like might be people at gunpoint being asked to speak into a microphone. Like that's the vibe you get from some of these shows. And so you like pitch like, hey, like it's almost it's a salesperson. It's like, hey, this looks like I would have a good time. Like, does anyone else want to watch that? And the kids shout, no. And then you work your way backwards to what are the animated films that they've seen before that I could watch again. Thankfully, my youngest very into Spider-Man right now. She will watch Spider-Verse as many times as I will allow her. And that's great. And Spider-Verse exists on that spectrum of, but she gets distracted watching Spider-Verse because Spider-Verse is a film that is trying to be a movie-ass movie. Like
it's a movie.
It is ambitions are so much greater to be more than just, it has extremely colorful visuals, but it's also trying to tell like a moving and interesting story that like allows it to stand up on repeated viewings for like a wider group of ages, including adults. The Mario movie is like, it's there because like, look, Mario's there and Luigi's there and it's fine. Like, and I just, I don't know. I feel like people have gone in with the wrong like the movie is an absolute home run for its ambitions. If you wanted more than that from a movie about Mario moving left to right, I don't know what you wanted from a Mario film. And that's not me being condescending to like children's fare, because I watch a lot of it and respect the ones that do it well. It's just like, this is what this movie was always going to be. And actually the thing that it really fucks up is they cast Fred Armisen as Cranky Kong. He fucking sucks. Like he is just, it's like sometimes when you watch a film with voice acting and this one is like disarmingly bad. Like he appears on the screen and I feel like I'm watching Scratch, like temp, like, oh, they got one of the people of Illumination to like do the voices for this and they uploaded the wrong file. Like it doesn't match the character. He's not entertaining or interesting. Whereas, Seth Rogen's not even doing a voice. I think he did an interview where he said, I pitched them on what if I just do my voice and not a well,
he's got a cartoon voice.
Yeah.
Right, he does.
The little phlegmy growl that comes out.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. It's and that part is fine, but Cranky is bad, and he has a decent role in the film. So every time he's on screen, you're just like,
because he's like
he's
trying to like do something, but it's not consistent. And
it would have been better if he just did his voice.
Yeah,
because at least like his default voice is like kind of has a comedic tenor to it. They're like, okay, well that's the Fred Armisen voice. Like, no, this is you don't even sound like you're trying to do I don't know what a Cranky Kong canonical voice is. I don't necessarily have one banked away. I like the Pratt stuff. Like it just goes away once the movie starts moving. And it's like, frankly, multiple times in the film, it's very clear he could do the voice that people like more closely wanted him to do. And the direction of the film quite literally points him elsewhere. So it's like, whatever you think of Pratt as an actor, and there are plenty of reasons to toss rocks in his direction, but like, he's capable of doing it. The movie just asks him not to. And so, yeah, it's a totally entertaining 90 minutes at the theater. I am not shocked that it's completely blowing up. And like, I would happily see a second one. They lay a lot of plot threads for where a much more interesting movie could be. It is cynically, I think, 90 minutes to maximize its replayability in a theater. That is actually part of why films are the time length that they are, so that you can maximize how often the movie is played during a particular day before it gets too late, especially if you're running a kid's film. And so if this movie has moments and character beats, especially between like Mario and Luigi, like the Mario and Luigi stuff is the best thing the movie has going for it. And unfortunately, the premise is that these two characters were apart for like most of the running time of the film. In the beginning, like Charlie Day is awesome as Luigi, and like him and Chris Pratt have a really great dynamic. It's just that immediately the movie like takes them away from one another, and then of course they're reunited at the end. And their bits are really funny, and like they work really well with one another, but the movie like just doesn't give it any room to breathe, which is really the biggest problem. Yeah. I think there's a movie that would have made a lot of people happier that was still operating at the same wavelength that it's currently at if it was like an hour and 45 minutes. Like if it just had scenes that just stayed still for an extra beat or two, but it's just moving on to the next thing faster and faster. And so I would hope maybe some sort of inevitable sequel, and they set one up here in the movie, of course, but I think even what it is here would work a lot better. And you see evidence of this actually in the Illumination stuff, like Despicable Me 2, which is like the second before they get like to the Minions spinoffs. Like, it's a really great film. It has like a lot of great character work with the 3 kids that like are like Illumination is capable of it. I just think they were given a specific task, and they did that task.
It's like, are you getting a Minions or are you getting a Despicable Me? Which, like, it's the same franchise, but those are very different types. They're very different.
Minions is way more slapstick, and Despicable Me is way closer to, we want to make like a movie. Like Illumination has like the Sing franchise, you know, with like, which is all just, hey, what are the big songs of the last like 3 years? How do we make an animated film wrapped around that? Secret Life of Pets, which is just, you know, I mean, they have all of these different quadrants of films that are like operating in the same space. But you're right, Cado, that I think if you just sat down, if any of you watch the Despicable Me films, the first 2 anyway, you'd be like, oh, like, okay, like those were trying to be movies,
right?
And not just what the Minions movies are, which is just colored images and slapstick humor. And this movie is more on the Minion side, but has all the elements that could be doing more if they like allowed like it a chance to do that. So
I also saw it over the weekend. And I feel like that was the big thing that stuck out to me, is just that they set up a lot of things that never get paid off, as far as like development with Luigi, and like, you know, he's the scaredy cat, and like at the end he has a moment where he like overcomes some fear, but like it never gets, you expect it to cut back to him back and forth between them a lot more than it ends up doing, right?
Yeah,
you
get like no time. Luigi is like basically not present in the film.
Yeah, and like you can see where the hour and 45-minute movie was, like, very clearly, and it's just like it being so close to that almost makes it a little more frustrating. It's just like, just make that, and it would have been still a great kids movie that maybe would have hit a little bit better with the older people.
Well, yeah, they set a decent emotional founding for Mario, where it's like essentially like the basis of the character is, you know, like his family thinks like he's dragging down his brother. He's like pitched as, I don't know, someone like maybe like in their late 20s that wants to start a business and like strike out on their own. And like, what does it mean to be sort of like an aimless 20-something that hasn't found a career, and your family thinks you're a joke? And it doesn't linger in that. It's not an especially sad movie, but there's like stuff here for the movie to work with, but more often than not, it chooses to use that as a foundation to just shove them in a pipe as fast as possible. Yeah. Like, I mean, even there's just, you know, the way he connects with Peach, it's like, I don't know, he sneaks into the castle and Peach is like, you want to come with me? And he's like, okay. Like, there's not like there's not an arc to any of the relationships, even though the movie has opportunities to do that kind of thing.
There's like a, you know, there's this thought around like good kids movies that can entertain the adults that have to take those kids to those movies as well. Like operating on those 2 levels, where I feel like this one, the attempt to operate on the level for parents was in reference, right? It was in like, do you remember this thing from the video games that you played as a child? That's all they're really giving, as far as like things that children might miss because they're maybe too young and haven't played some of the older
like
games, or like
Wrecking Crew hat.
Yeah,
there's different levels, right?
Who knows who Spike is? No one. I had to look up Spike even. I was like,
there are layers of references. It's basically like how big of like a nerd are you on this? Are you someone that like
did you notice
owned a Nintendo?
Pauline was in there's like nobody's gonna remember who that is, but like she was on there for like a hot second.
Hey, so the mayor, from a lore perspective, the mayor is from New Donk City, is present in this film, right? Isn't that the mayor from New Donk City?
Yeah, Pauline Pauline is like the original damsel in like the Donkey Kong games.
Right,
it's
I know
not
that,
Peach,
but I'm saying,
right?
is it being suggested? Because they do say Brooklyn.
They
right?
do,
like
and it's Brooklyn. Well, my implication, like my thought was like at the end, the worlds kind of fucking like collide. Does that create New Donk City? I don't know.
So like New Donk City is the result
of New York City
of
and fucking
the fracturing of Mushroom Kingdom and Brooklyn. Yeah. Okay. Because I was wondering,
that's what I would assume they like are aiming for, right? Because that's
okay. As opposed to just Brooklyn has just been shoved as a borough within New Donk City, like.
It's just because Paulino was there, right? Like they set that all up as like, oh, if you wanted to follow that lore of the New Donk City being a thing, you totally could. It's like that's where there's normal human being. Also, him being short is very funny. Just like, oh, you're so tiny, and then let me give you this mushroom. Like, oh, that's how you did that? He's just like a very, very short man.
And they make him not like mushrooms. That made me laugh.
Yeah.
That was all right. Like, and it's also just a movie built around set pieces, right? You can just clearly see like concept artists having like, you know, like when they go to the, you know, Donkey Kong, you know, or was it the Forest Kingdom or whatever it's called. And then they have that whole sequence where they're getting driven up to Cranky Kong. It's like, oh, like, yeah, like this is a movie. How do we get to the next set piece? But I will say, like, they're very visually arresting set pieces. Like, it is like delightful. Movie I wish I'd seen in 3D, frankly. I don't know what the conversion is like, but it's the kind of movie that would have really popped in 3D if done right. You know, we just saw it in a regular theater. I don't know if it's like how it looks in IMAX or if it's stretched out. But it is. I
wonder, like, if anyone who works in the industry knows, write in. Like, because movies are rendered in 3D, does that make the conversion like right?
Easier?
Or are there tricks that people use to animate things that would, if you just like rendered it in 3D, it's like, oh, actually that doesn't track. But I would assume, my assumption is like, if you know you're gonna make a movie that might be converted in 3D and you're already 3D animating it, like why not just make it, you know, kind of export that environment the way that it needs to be exported for that. But I don't actually know how those systems work. So someone let us know.
But yeah, it's it pops. And I was, you know, my kids are satisfied. I was satisfied. I don't know that I came out of it being like, I need to see that again, but like,
but you will.
I will. But also, crucially, that is the bar that you come out of these films is, how would I feel if I had to watch this 5 more times? And I would have no problem doing it, which is like, it hit that threshold just fine. And I will say, just as an aside, I found myself, like I mentioned on this show before, like I don't push video games on my kids. I don't push like the IPs that I was interested in as a kid on my, like I just sort of want them to figure it out, and like the chips fall where they land on their interests. But it was like oddly sort of like emotional to be sitting. And I think this is part of why this movie is going to be as big as it is. Like to be sitting there, like with my, you know, 6-year-old, like holding her hand during the time she gets scared because of Bowser. And like, I don't know, just that like weird, like this enormous generational gap between the two of us. And we're sitting here watching this and a smile on both our faces for completely different reasons. And that's like, I mean, that's the shit that Disney, you know, I think Disney cynically exploits and Nintendo less so cynically exploits, but that ability to have an experience with like 2 giant age gaps is just extremely cool. And that more than anything was the thing that I enjoyed about that moment, was like looking around a theater and like you saw a lot of people having a good time, which is not always the case with the kids' films that you're being brought to. And it's like you bring a lot of baggage to this movie, like with your own history and emotion, sort of like with these franchises and this medium. And I really enjoyed that part of it. And it's like I didn't get quite weepy, but like I thought about it and I was like, oh, if I wanted to get weepy, I could right now. I'm gonna suppress that. We're not gonna do that right now. But I did enjoy that moment with my kids where it's like, oh, I've tried really hard to just let them find their own way, and yet here we are with this thing that like runs between the two of us, and I really enjoyed that part.
Patrick just spinning his weightiest emotions on his finger like it's a basketball, and just like, will it drop? No, it won't. I believe it shall. I believe it shall remain spinning.
Do I want to fuck with this right now? No,
but I could, and it would be healthy and maybe even healing. Oh yeah, we don't need to dunk on the Game Awards tweet about the. Hey, guess where the biggest franchises on TV and film right now? Video game. No, like, yeah, the boosterism gets a little bit hard.
That account does that constantly. I feel that is deliberate. They are just you have to resist resist responding to that account. It just exists. It's done because it's done it multiple times. It has done that sort of boosterism tweeting before for games.
Yeah,
that's.
I was just putting in the chat. I wasn't gonna say anything.
There's a vibe of like, it's like when like people doing like missionary work are like, have you heard the good news? And it's like, yeah, I live in America. I know what the good news is. Shut the fuck up. But it's like that, but for video games. Happy Easter, everybody. Ren,
Hi.
so you have been playing some games. One I've been very curious about, Everspace 2.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
I hope this is good. I thought about installing this over the weekend.
This is my
Please
reaction
tell me
too.
it's
I hope
good.
this is good. Ren, is Everspace 2 good?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was that Ren's Mario voice?
Yahoo, let's go. Everspace 2 is fine. No, Everspace 2 is good. I mean, like, it is okay. The first Everspace released a few years ago and was a first or third person 6 degrees of freedom roguelike space shooter / flight sim leaning more towards arcadey shooter, in which you are piloting a little ship through a series of systems, doing like 6 degrees of freedom, like movement as you're fighting a bunch of enemies in dogfights, right? In aerial dogfights in space. Everspace 2 takes that roguelike structure and throws it out the window and replaces it with a more traditional open world campaign structure.
Speaking my language. Like a roguelike, overrated, directed campaign, a little bit like Colony Wars. Like, come on, let's go.
Yeah, you can do like, and they toss it out and they're like, what if there was just like some light trading elements in here for the Rob Zachnys of the world? What if you were in a system and it was like, hey, the prices on these clothes and this
We got tungsten. Tungsten here. It's cheap.
are a little bit low, but if you take it to that system over there, and like the basic trading mechanics, they work.
What if you filled your cargo hold with something that was on discount, and then you're like, oh no, I don't know where to sell this, and you flew around space with a trunk full of shit, and you were like, surely I bought low, surely someone will buy it high.
And no one's buying it high. Those 43 t-shirts are yours now. And so it is a really competent one of these. I played it about 3 years ago when it was first releasing in like a early access and like a closed alpha. Actually, fun Renata price fact, this was the first piece I ever published, was about Everspace 2 when I was the intern at Fanbyte. So this is a full 3 years, full circle on me and Everspace 2, writing about the way that the railguns feel on that game because they feel very good. And so you play as this military clone who is basically trying to, at the onset of the game, save his friend's life, who is in a cryopod while working with this like this other former military guy who is like, yeah, I want one big job to get me out of the outlaw life and to leave the demilitarized zone of space that the game takes place in, which is very hard to leave because it's a demilitarized zone. And so to do this, you go on like a bunch of campaign missions, which are like very simple objectives, flying through space. The flying feels good. It has a 6 degrees of freedom system where you are like, okay, roll, pitch, yaw, et cetera. But also like you can do the very fun space thing of boosting forward, letting go of the thrust, turning around, and then boosting the other direction to like fly directly in the direction you're going previously by just
What else do I need?
Yeah. And like that's the dream of space combat to me, is that exact feeling of like, cool, I'm going to disable inertia control for just 1 second to flip around. And so this stops feeling like an airplane for a moment and starts feeling like a thing in space. And those moments are really good and work very well.
It has loot though, right?
A little bit, yeah, it does.
Okay, because that was I'd seen that associated with the game, and that also can set off some red flags for me in terms of like, okay, what is the moment how much am I fiddling with this element of that, and how much does that actually feel as though that's like the core directive of why you're doing what you're doing in the game is just to get a slightly better, I don't know, laser or whatever.
No, I don't really fuck with loot that much. Like there is a traditional like level up system that's happening, and it's more like, what are you finding in the world? Do you like that weapon? So like right now I have a common railgun as one of the things. And like the railguns fire at a delicious 3.5 kilometers. And so if you see another ship 3.5 kilometers away, they are a goddamn speck. And the feeling of landing a shot at 3.5 kilometers and just seeing just a tiny little fireball pop up on your screen is delicious. Point A. And point B, like a common weapon fully charged firing at that range will be perfectly effective, right? Like you will get the job done. I've been playing the game on hard difficulty because I'm an idiot. And do that kind of across the board. And like, it has been engaging without me being like, there's not a situation where I'm in a fight and I'm like, the problem here is the gun that I have. The issue is that like, I'm using a common weapon instead of a rare one, right? That has not been the case really at all. And so, that side of things is working perfectly fine. I think it's a very competent arcade space shooter. I think that at times it is closer to what is the 6 Degrees of Freedom shooter that was released? Descent.
Well, Descent is that Descent. You've got like Free Space. What like? Wow, this is like a certain era of like early 2000s shooter that doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Free Space. So Free Space is like the X-wing type series type space shooter. Descent
is a level to level. Like it came out of the era like post Doom. Like what else can we put in first person?
It's a 3D zero-G corridor shooter, but like hyper fast and disorienting as hell. But there's also like Rebel Galaxy, which is not 6 Degrees of Freedom. Obviously, that was sort of like it faked like there was like vertical like plane movement, and there wasn't really.
So your ship is maneuverable in ways that are not realistic. That's for damn sure. But like you can move through extremely tight spaces. That is a thing that this game is going to occasionally ask you to do, is to go into the interior of a ship.
We love a trench run. We love going inside the Death Star too and blowing it up.
Yes. But it's not in a like, I'm going really fast through this space way. It's not like a quick trench run. It's a like, whoop, whoop. Let me just like slide around. Let me like peek around this
Descent.
corner.
That's my memories of Descent is like, you are occasionally like you're zipping through something, but I'm
getting sold here.
Yeah. Well, I've wanted to be. I went into this segment wanting to be sold because I have a longing. I don't like space sims. I loved arcade space.
So Patrick, your kryptonite is the minute it's like balance your energy sources and like use more to shields, like manage weapon systems. That
I could do X-Wing TIE Fighter, right? Like, but that was like rubbing up, like it was simmy elements without feeling sim dominant. So you know what I mean? Like, but the Colony Wars, like the like Psygnosis era of like the PS1, like that cool. Was absolutely my favorite shit. It was basically just like a third person like action shooter that just happened to be set in space. Like that is the stuff that I miss that they don't really make anymore. Sorry, Cado, you were trying to say something.
Oh no, I was just mentioning like Squadrons. Did you try that game?
I didn't. I should have.
It's like
I did not.
It's got that like, you have the ability to move things between weapons, shields, and like boost, and it's just enough to be like I'm doing the thing, but it's not a ton of numbers and like
yes. That's like otherwise like when I try. I remember in the 90s, Rob, I tried really hard to get into MechWarrior 2. Yeah, and like loved the visuals, loved everything about it, and then was just like I cannot manage. Like I keep overheating and then I die. And so it's like in that era of when I had a PC, like I was playing a lot of PC games, like there were a lot of games like that. And it was like trying to figure out which one like sets me up or gets me too far down the sim path.
Rob, come into my corner for a little cycle, just for a moment. Hey Rob, what if you used that 4090 and got really into Elite Dangerous?
I don't think. Well, it's been a while.
That's been a while.
It's been
Can't
a
you,
while.
can't you
Hey,
land
Rob.
on
Hey, Rob.
planets in that game now?
Hey,
Yeah.
you can. Hey, Rob, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's such a oh my god, it was like being a space like last mile delivery worker is kind of how it felt. Like I was like, I cannot fucking handle this. Where it was like I could not, it was like, look at all the shit you can do and all the ships you can buy, and it's like I can't make enough money to get out of this little corner of the galaxy because I'm just like running between a dozen star systems picking up scraps. But I that was before I had a 4090, and it was when I had a worse joystick and throttle. So maybe
we should check in on Elite Dangerous, Rob. But this is all to say that Patrick, I think Everspace 2 is the game for you. It is arcadey in the exact way that I think that you are looking for.
But it's also not like every 30 seconds. It's like, quick, dump that green laser and put this purple legendary laser on your ship.
No, it's not doing that every 30
feels
seconds.
like it's running this like night. Like, cause I watched the trailers for Everspace 1 a lot and was like, And then the roguelike stuff stopped me just because I'm very particular about that structure, and like I like it, but I don't like it in every game. It's not. I don't find it to be additive necessarily to every experience. And so as soon as I started reading about the structure of this one, it's like, oh, that doesn't even need to be a good story. Like it doesn't. Like like that is irrelevant to my interests. And so I was doing I was Googling like Steam Deck performance on this because I got a flight coming up on Thursday. I was like, is this something I could do?
And it's a perfectly like competent story. It's like totally fine. It's like the performances are well done. And I think it is arcadey in the way that you're looking for. I think that there is a diversity of weapons that feels really good. It splits it between like kinetic and energy weapons and weapons that have like, I've been using this like it's like a swarm missile with like targeting systems that like fires once you're within like 1.5 kilometers of something, and as long as you like have it relatively in there, it just releases this like this like swarm of homing energy and lasers that is like extremely sick to watch like flit through the air and like go around guys. Or alternatively, you have like the railgun and the coil gun, which are these like instantly firing, you do not need to lead your shots at all, like kinetic weapons that feel very satisfying to like land hits with, because like the railgun fully charged will just instantly destroy a motherfucker, but the coil gun is like bop bop bop. It feels like a closer to like a semi-automatic rifle tied to your spaceship in a way that is like
so this is
very satisfying.
So back in the old Lucas Arts World War II flight shooter games, one thing that distinguished like a lot of like the German aircraft from the Allied aircraft was like the Germans had this philosophy of putting they'd have the machine guns mounted on the wings, but then they would have like a larger caliber cannon mounted that had a slow rate of fire. And that sounds exactly like the thing where it's like more of a, like, it's not like bap, 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 bap. It's like chunk, bop, chunk, bop, chunk. Bop, yeah, exactly. Bop. And it's like harder hitting, but like you really want to make those shots count.
Yeah, exactly. It is exactly that. And like the diversity of weapons is solid. The moving through space feels good. There are like puzzles. And
I have an obvious question, but it's so, sometimes like when you say something's a shooter, kind of they're going to try to feed you as much stuff to shoot as possible, like in terms of ammunition. But is this like a thing where some weapons are kind of infinite ammo and then some like are, once that rack is empty, you're kind of on your own for the mission?
You have secondary weapons. So secondary weapons have ammo. Primary weapons just recharge with your ship's energy. So you're not like expending, you're not going to run out of railgun rounds. It's just like, are you going to spend all of your railgun's energy and let it recharge for a bit? At which point you have to switch to your other primary weapon to like, do a fight, versus your secondary weapons, which is like your missile systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, where those have ammunition that you have to like restock. It is like very, very, the management aspects are extremely light if you want them to be. You can just completely ignore them if you really feel like it. Or you can like, actually try and do a bit of space trucking to be able to afford like the really nice gun, if the idea of affording the really nice gun sounds like a fun fantasy for you.
Which, I mean, as somebody who one of my most formative games was Privateer, which was the spinoff from Wing Commander, where it was like, it was my first, like, ironically, now, having said, like, I don't really like games where I'm just a space trucker. Privateer was like, what if you were in the world of Wing Commander? Yeah, no, 100%.
Who was Free Space then? Was that also?
That was an offshoot of Descent, but that was Volition.
Really?
Yeah, no, like,
I guess I think I'm mixing up Privateer and Free Space in my head. I thought that was the Wing Commander folks, but I defer to you.
Yeah, no, wildly different. So Privateer sort of ends up pointing in the direction I think Chris Roberts really wanted to go and sort of became obsessed with, because Privateer is set in the Wing Commander universe.
Have you tried to run Star Citizen on your new will it finally be able playable?
Senator wrote in about Star Citizen not that long ago and made some good points, interesting points. But yeah, no, so Privateer is like in the world of a traditional space shooter series where humans are fighting to death against giant evil cats. You were playing off in a corner of the galaxy, being
the Kilrathi. Please show some goddamn respect.
Hey, I was for people who maybe don't know about the Kilrathi. I was trying to leave the door open. You could, like, maybe if you're curious about, like, murderous evil cats, you say, tell me more
Mark
about
Hamill
the Wing
in
Commander
a lot
series.
of FMV.
What?
So this is okay. So Chris Robert, like, what distinguished Wing Commander was that there was a ton of narrative elements to it. No, it was always like presented as if it was like a faux movie. But this goes back to like pixel art cutscenes and such, but they're always like very letterboxed, and so like it was a military drama aboard like an aircraft carrier for the first game. Second game is sort of following on from that, but then Privateer comes along, and it's, what if you're in a corner of this galaxy and you're doing like delivery missions and bounty hunting and all this stuff. And you're pursuing an entirely different like threat to the galaxy out there. And that game was awesome. Like, it was so cool where I was like, I'm like in this world that I've only like this is it's funny now to look at these concepts because they're so basic to games. But at the time it like blew my mind that Privateer, it was like, wow, this world that I only sort of heard about that was in the background of the Wing Commander games, now I can go anywhere and do anything in it. And what that meant was go to a bunch of identical space stations, take like procedurally generated identical missions, and go to a different place, do them, and then like cash in and like buy bigger gun. And I'd be like, oh man, now I've got mass driver cannons, so now I'm really going to do some damage. So then Privateer 2 comes along, and it's set in a different universe. He just, like, Chris Roberts just like, no, Privateer 2 is going to have nothing to do with Wing Commander. It's going to be a different, like, sci-fi setting.
Wow.
And Clive Owen is going to be the star.
Privateer 2, The Darkening. That's an incredible subtitle.
One of Clive Owen's first.
Included Clive Owen, John Hurt, Christopher Walken. Incredible.
What?
Yes.
Holy shit.
And then project forward far enough, and then you get to Chris Roberts wanting to make Freelancer, which is a bit like Wing Commander meets Elite, and then that sort of destroys his studio, Digital Anvil, because he can't make it on the tech at the time. But maybe in a few years' time, the tech will be there. And that's when he shows back up on Kickstarter with Star Citizen. But he's like, but then we're going to make Squadron 42. And it's going to have Mark Hamill and a bunch of stars. And it's going to be like the single player, entry point to Star Citizen. And here we are today.
Never going to happen. It's never going to exist.
But meanwhile, Everspace 2 is here. And I think it sounds like all our hearts are open to it.
Yeah. It is a fun time. I think you will have a fun time. I think that both Rob and Patrick will sit down and have a nice evening. They'll have a pleasant evening with Everspace too.
I'm a huge fan of having pleasant evenings. I love being mildly diverted. That is my shit. Like if I can shut down a computer or like turn off a game system and I'm like, that was indeed amusing. That's a huge dub in my in
Was
my book.
indeed.
Well, the last game that I almost got tempted by in the same arc was Chorvis.
Chorves.
My boy Chorves.
Chores.
We just don't want to try. I just bounced off it so hard.
Yes,
It's like
we just don't get a lot of games in this mold, like the action space shooter mold. It is a rarity. It used to be very popular, at least popular enough.
well, we will contemplate what else we might find mildly diverting while we take a quick break, and we'll be back after this. And we're back. And hey, remember, Waypoint Plus listeners get the podcast ad-free. Learn more at waypointplus.com and see how you could have filled that break with nothing but the cool tunes that Cado inserts to mark where we took an ad break. Ren, there's another game you've been playing a bit of, Darkest Dungeon, but with a twist.
Yes, I have been playing the overhaul mod Black Reliquary, which was released on Steam Early Access as it is a mod with its own bespoke Steam page, which is a thing that happens on Steam sometimes and is usually a sign that like a mod has become acknowledged by
A super total conversion
that is recognized by the people who made the base game, right? Like this is like Black Mesa, the massive Half-Life mod that like basically rebuilds Half-Life in the in like modern Source. Is an example of this. Black Reliquary is another, which is a Darkest Dungeon overhaul mod that functions almost like a sequel. I think it feels closer to a sequel than an expansion at times, and takes the narrative and shifts it from a singular house where you're investigating the sins of your ancestor and moves it to a like fantasy Middle East and like fantasy desert locale, and has you investigating an ancient society or like an ancient civilization of necromancers called the Kavarots, who did dark necromancy, and now you're investigating this section of the world from, instead of a hamlet, a massive airship. And so it takes this, changes to the setting, adds in 4 new classes if you use all of the add-ons, completely rebalances the base classes and rebalances the base game, and then also like changes some like pretty fundamental design approaches at the core of Darkest Dungeon in ways that I find really interesting, especially with the like upcoming release of Darkest Dungeon 2's 1.0, which is like a very different idea of what a sequel looks like. If Darkest Dungeon 2 is the let's shift genres sequel that Everspace 2 is to Everspace 1, then Black Reliquary is the iterative sequel that so many other games will approach from title to title. And I think that like Black Reliquary is, hey, if you like Darkest Dungeon and you wanted more Darkest Dungeon and kind of a like more spiteful, slightly rougher Darkest Dungeon, I think that is Black Reliquary. And a game that is interested in offering bigger swings, even than the original.
See, as you were saying that, I was throwing myself off that goddamn airship. The minute you're like, but like more Darkest Dungeon, but
what
with
if
a little
meaner?
more spite. I'm like, nope, no, thank you. Which, by the way, it also sounds like then Darkest Dungeon 2 will definitely not be my jam. But even here, I'm like, oh, I could barely handle the setback. Like the way that it was like, you know, like when you're running up a dune, you know, like the sand, like you sort of begin carving away at the dune with your legs. You know, that was Darkest Dungeon to me, where it's like I'm running as hard as I can and I'm sliding back.
So, Rob, let me describe to you a fight that I had in Black Reliquary. I'm moving through a short dungeon. I have to go to 20 rooms, or like 12 rooms. I have to go to 12 rooms to check them out and see what's in there to finish this mission. While I am walking through the hallway, I bump into a group of Kavarats, which are the like necromancer faction.
Yeah.
I want you to, do you remember how long like a standard fight in Darkest Dungeon takes in terms of how many turns it takes?
Yeah, we got a decent vibe for that.
Yeah. Say a number. How many turns you think that
like
fight
just
took?
a standard encounter in like a random hallway.
Yeah, a hallway encounter. Yeah.
God, I'm gonna say like, man, we could have that thing sewed up by 6 full go rounds of the squad at most. Like it would not be that many.
15 turns and a party wipe.
Nope.
Oh no.
Because the way this faction works is if you leave a corpse up and there is a specific enemy still present, they will res that shit immediately. Even if you took the enemy out that same turn, they will res them even as like a different kind of enemy like that.
Wait, so it's like not even they come back as like a low tier zombie. It could be like a real ass kicker comes back.
It's not a real ass kicker, but it's not like a trash mob.
Okay.
So for example, like one of the things that was the thing that wiped me was this like res guy kept like resing the same corpses over and over again, and it kept resurrecting them as like the floating head, and the floating head does a like I'm gonna blow up attack that does like 20 damage to all your guys, right? And it's a self-destruct
Yeah.
that leaves a corpse.
What? Okay. Yeah.
That can be instantly
That's bullshit.
rezzed.
You cannot make the suicide drone's corpse
A resable,
a body that can be that's
rezzed
bullshit.
back
That
into a
is
suicide
bullshit.
drone.
I hate that philosophically.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so just 15 turns of Rob, what a perfect metaphor, walking up that motherfucking sand dune, being like, surely my feet won't sink in too deep to the sand this time. Surely. And like, I'm trying to, here's the thing. The thing I should have done in that situation was just kill the guy who was rezzing. But I was like, I need to keep like threat mitigating or I'm going
that's
to
Darkest Dungeon, right? It's always this one thing in this fight is going to fuck me. This one thing is going to tip the entire balance of the encounter away from me, and I got to get to it.
Yeah.
But also, if I take my eye off the like onslaught that's surrounding me, this thing's going to get away from me fast, and like I'm just not going to have the hitting power to deal with it.
Exactly. But here is the thing. Where Black Reliquary is significantly meaner to the player, it also allows for a level of synergy and expression that I think that the base game does not. And like allows for you to do your own really stupid big swings. Because one of the things that the game does is it rethinks how trinkets work. Where in the base game, like trinkets are always like pretty light stat buffs. Occasionally you'll get like a special trinket that is like class specific that actually like does some real shit, but like some real shit is not that much of a change. That is not the case in Black Reliquary, where I was coming across trinkets that would completely change how I approached a given class and would allow me to like fit them into different slots in a party composition, where when I found a good party comp, like a truly good party comp, I was devastating enemies en masse in a way that was like deeply, deeply satisfying. like running with a plague doctor and a grave robber at the same time is incredible, because the grave robber has an ability that does extra damage if an enemy is marked and poisoned at the same time. They also have an ability that marks enemies and increases the amount of blight damage they take. When blight is applied, it increases the size of the stack. And so if you have a grave robber and a plague doctor, grave robber starts by applying the mark that also decreases plague resistance. Then the plague doctor actually applies the blight, and then the grave robber gets to do like really solid burst damage the next turn. And like for the subsequent turns. And that feels really good. And like you have these inter-character combos that play out in ways that I do not think happen as cleanly or as like in a way that feels expressive in the base game. Because I feel like in a lot of base Darkest Dungeon is each character is kind of doing their own thing, and their skill sets are not talking to one another in meaningful ways, other than like moving, positioning around, or like doing buffs and debuffs. This is actually one of the real strengths of the second game, is that the combat system in Darkest Dungeon 2 is very much combo oriented, where different characters are like bouncing off of one another and like doing setups and dunks constantly in like an ever evolving rotation. And I think that like when you're kicking ass in Black Reliquary, it feels better than the base game to be kicking ass. It is just that it is a game that is like that will grind you into the goddamn dirt. If you start slipping up.
But I mean, it's a Massacre masterpiece. It's kind of in its DNA. I'm curious, is there like, there's narration that ties Darkest Dungeon together? Is this like fully voiced?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
They brought in a new narrator.
My next question, how maybe awkwardly Orientalist do we get in places here?
Very.
Yeah.
Or solidly. It's this is like my primary point of frustration, is like the game isn't being awful. It's not the worst I've ever seen of this. You're also fighting people way more frequently than you do in the base game, which is basically never. You are very, very, very infrequently fighting people in the base game. Instead, you are primarily fighting like gross eldritch monsters. In Black Reliquary, you are very, very frequently fighting different factions of people. There are two primary factions: the Wildlanders, who are like very much based off of like classical Conan-esque barbarians. They're like very clearly based off of the like same group of people that the in-game Hellion is from. There is a literal like mechanical reskin of the Hellion in the like Wildlander faction. There is also the Levantine Empire, which is just like very much trying to do like an Ottoman Empire thing, and very, very aggressively doing that. And like it's not the worst I've ever seen. It's, I think, pretty okay, but there are some character designs that are like, what are we doing, folks? Hey, what are we doing here? Let me just there's a screenshot button. Not stellar. However, I will say this.
Not the worst, though.
No, not the worst. Not the worst by any means. The narrator they got, really good. He's legitimately excellent. And the writing is solid.
Yeah. This also comes with the territory, right? This is when you're in sort of the gothic pulpy adventure space where like it's gonna skew broad. in ways that are going to be uncomfortable, almost inevitably, given the baggage that tends to be deployed around like other cultures.
Yeah.
In this genre. But yeah, it was the concern I had the minute you were like, you're in a new setting, and it's like, sort of a Middle Eastern place. I was like, okay, well, this could go a direction. It sounds like kind of did, but within what you would expect from a Darkest Dungeon game.
Yeah, I would say it is playing in a little bit messier territory than even.
Is it doing a thing where like all the people from this place are like bad and your enemies, or like do some of them crop up in your party as well, where it's like you are taking part in an ongoing, you know what I mean? That like it's not monolithic.
No, it's not monolithic. Like the ship you are on is led by a ex-Navy member of this empire who is like, hey, Empire, not for me.
Yeah, exactly. So it's at least not like, all right, everybody put on your pith helmets and go. Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds really cool. See, every time I encounter Darkest Dungeon 1 stuff, I'm like, I should get back to that. I should try that again. And then I think about how mind control broke my fucking spirit.
Rob, what if I told you they put a mech in Black Reliquary? Did that do anything?
Is it powered by steam and gears or magic?
The latter. It's powered by like eldritch energy stolen from the Necromancer Empire.
I love it. Yes. Hell yeah.
Yeah. And like the classes they added.
It takes up 2 slots, right?
No.
Ooh.
It takes up 1 slot. The trade-off is that the character can, once they turn into it, once they like get in the mech, you only get to do that once per rest, but you can stay in the mech across multiple battles. Okay. You just have to, like, once you get out, you are getting out for a significant period of time. So like you are starting as this like light ranged character, and then like once you're in the mech for the next couple of battles. Unless you want to go back to the slightly weaker or different functioning ranged character in a way that is like, I think it's cute. I think it's fun. They also added like 2 new status effects, which I think are like really interestingly designed because both status effects basically put an effect on the enemy that changes what the status effect does depending on what kind of ability the enemy uses. So if they use a buff, it increases the amount of damage they take. And if they do a non-killing attack, it reduces the amount of damage they deal going forward. For example, the other one is like, if you use a buff, it damages you. If you do an attack, it heals the enemy party for a portion of the damage that you're attacked in. And like they're like very cute status effects called Amber Lighted and Expiated that are tied to like a couple of the factions in the world, and like each like character interacts with Amber Light and Expiate in unique ways that again add to this like combo potential that I was talking about earlier. And so like I think it is like I think it was boldly designed, is what I'll say from like a gameplay perspective.
It sounds awesome though. So yeah, that is Black Reliquary, and you can just like buy that separately. Oh, and there's also a bundle now, so like very officially recognized by Red Hook.
Yes, and you cannot buy it separately. The mod is free, but it requires every single DLC to function. And so what they did was they were like, we're going to... Oh, I was
reading the DLC. The soundtrack is $9.99, not the game. Okay, that's very cool. Okay.
The mod itself is free, but requires it. And then they were like, we're going to make a bundle that will tell you if the game will work or not. If you can purchase the bundle, then you can probably not play the game. You should just get the bundle. So you can actually like play the mod properly because it requires every single DLC to run correctly.
Awesome. Yeah, that is almost enough to bring. But then I think about like I have to get back in those Eldritch caves, and I just can't do it.
I think you need to do it though, Rob, for the content. Like I think you need to think a little bit.
Really, it's a management. Rob. It's a sports management game. You're drafting your bench. You're fielding your squad. You're working your rotation.
Who is your DeMar DeRozan in this? Just think about it like you're doing a little Bulls play-in tournament in Darkest Dungeon. Think of it that way.
Rob, let's go into the darkest dungeon. Rob, let's go into the
Let's
darkest
be a little
dungeon.
mouse in the darkest dungeon.
Squeak, squeak, squeak. Ooh, I'm chewing these bones in the walls. Oh no, they had a little bit of an elder god in them. Squeak, squeak.
Rob, the bang 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 is going to take on a different feeling and tone in this context, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so I didn't get to talk about this last week, but it was Cado and I did a Motorsports Manager stream on Friday, but the night before we streamed, I sort of like hit my moment of I can't handle this temporary desk studio arrangement. I've got to like get the desk closer to the wall. I've got to move things in a better position so there's a better flow to all of this, and I need to start integrating some of the things that I got to make things even easy. Okay, so people can tell me things and they will just lodge in my brain and I'll become fixated on them. One of the things that got lodged in my brain was Will Smith, tech pod Will Smith, not that Will Smith, not the actor. Will Smith saying that if you're doing a lot of capture card stuff, etc., you got to be careful because, well, like your standard USB-A port is rated for thousands and thousands of connects and disconnects. Like those things just keep working through tons of cycles. HDMI is not. HDMI works for hundreds of connects and disconnects, which sounds like a lot, but if you're doing it frequently, it is maybe not. And you could just be one of the people who's unlucky and like you sort of loosen or disable the port faster than you would expect. Once Will said that, it just stuck in my head and I was like, I need to get an HDMI switcher. It will like for the permanent solution around a capture card, there needs to be some sort of HDMI switcher in the flow, so that is the place that is taking all the like plug and unplug stress and not the devices.
A simple accessory.
But then I got to thinking.
Oh God.
So like obviously this HDMI switcher has to be able to pass along 4K at 120.
The prices I went down this road when I had to get an HDMI switcher.
Oh no,
Rob.
And then I was thinking, what would be really useful though is if it could feed both like the capture card, but then if I don't want to run through things through the capture card, I could just go straight into the TV without having to mess with anything. And so really I would love if it also split the HDMI signal.
Yeah.
And could pass it to two different destinations.
Yeah. This is the thing they do. This is the thing
they do. But so I was like, so it's gotta do 4K and 120. Obviously, when that's probably that will hopefully make the G-Sync stuff work. It'll also split the signal. Okay, what am I looking at here?
Thousands.
And indeed, Patrick, I'm looking at a specialty item now. And but I did find one. It's a difficult space to shop in because all the companies that make this stuff, it's like it looks really fly by night because effectively you're just buying from factories in China, right, where these things are being fabbed, and like
No, sorry. Continue.
Well, yeah,
I'll come back around to this.
So like where I was looking at a variety of places, there's like pro grade stuff that's like name brand and very expensive, and then there's like I don't want to pay those types of. I don't want that. That's not in the budget.
I want a little exploitation so that the dollar signs go down. Where do I buy that one?
It's more like the stuff that like there's stuff that's clearly like for some sort of like
TV studios,
pro
right?
studio.
Like,
this is going to be in a production truck somewhere. I don't need production truck. It needs to sit on my little desk and I need to hit a button. But like it's more the issue that like there's a whole bunch of stuff that looks good, but like there's no information that I could find about like what company actually makes this, right? Like who is creating this little box that does all these cool things? Who the fuck is making it? And it just comes from a variety of anonymous storefronts, and there's not much about that. And then there's a lot of options that didn't do quite what I wanted. So it took some doing. I finally settled on product that seemed pretty cool. I'm sure it's basically built alongside the stuff that didn't have any sort of name brands on it. But this is at least a company that does a lot of like splitter type work in the audio field. So I went with them, and it showed up really fast. I was very pleased. I got the Ocean Matrix 8K. It's a 2x1x2 splitter switcher, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that prohibitively expensive, and I was like, I hope this works out. Cut to me reorganizing my office and plugging all this stuff in. And it all puts out to the TV just fine. The capture card can't see anything. Capture card's not getting any feed through anything.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And there's I was like, is this HDCP? There's like evidence that like HDCP is like more built into the 4090, the 40 generation of NVIDIA. Like NVIDIA now is, I guess, getting more HDCP compliant, but like if that were a big thing, like people would have mentioned it more. So that couldn't be it, but like nothing was coming through. And so I'm sitting there, and to make all this work, I've gotten 2 new cables with this thing. I'm sitting there, and Dream Cado was with me. This is all 3 a.m. And so, Dream Cado was there.
Sorry,
Yes.
what? Sorry, who was it?
So while I was doing this, I was sort of frequently asking myself, like, what would Cado say at this moment? What would Cado do?
Mm-hmm.
And I was contemplating these cables.
Is this real Cado or your belief what you want Cado to
It's
tell
both
you?
my belief, but also I think Cado would have said this too, because I've heard Cado say it.
Yeah. What did
I was
say?
looking at this cable, and I heard Cado say it's never the cable, except sometimes it is. And so I just got down, and every time you do this, I'm getting back under the desk, like switching a bunch of things out, because the whole point was to move things out of the way in a nice, like cleaned up manner. And I start just plugging things and unplugging them, and I take the entire switcher out of the signal flow, etc. And now the capture card is working as you'd expect. Okay, so maybe it's the switcher, but like let's try it back in. And through some dark ritual of it was like, because the devices talk directly to the capture card and the capture card spoke directly to them, like some sort of handshake took place. When I plugged the cables back into the switcher, suddenly everything worked. And it wasn't the cables. It was just some sort of like handshake thing hadn't fired.
Uh-huh.
I mean, this happens in basics. Like my capture card in OBS, like I'll open up, and mine's just a dinky little, a box that I run through. I'll open OBS, and it's a coin flip on whether that signal is going to show up. And all I do is close OBS, turn it back on. I don't know what the shake. I don't know, like at that point why it wouldn't want to see it, but like, and it's not like deactivate the device, turn it back on.
No,
it's close OBS, open OBS, and then poof, like there's the feed has appeared.
But like all this process was like 90 minutes of like restarting things, trying different cables, swapping. And at the end, it all started working beautifully. Like the setup worked exactly as I intended.
Nice.
Which is awesome. I was like, this thing is incredibly cool. When I unplug the capture card from it, it passes through the 120 frames per second. The capture card is now the bottleneck on this. If it's in the flow, it's going to turn off G-Sync and it's going to turn off 4K 120. If it is out of the flow, it passes all that stuff through.
So is it not a splitter too? Where are you splitting to now?
It's splitting. So it is splitting to both the TV and to the capture card.
Right.
The TV can still pull from the capture card if it wants, though there's no point to doing that. Maybe that's the issue, that's plugged into the capture card out. Maybe that's it. I could try that, but like, but my suspicion, I don't know. That's a good point, because like what is happening is when the capture card is part of the flow, I lose G-Sync, I lose 4K 120. and it goes to 4K at 60, which is like, it's fine, but it's clearly not. It's not like,
and that's not
G-Sync's the real loss.
That's
there,
not using the pass through, but using the switcher, right? Because your capture card has a pass through, right?
Yes,
and so that's still plugged in, but you're not using it,
right?
And
you're saying I should unplug it from the card pass through? Okay.
Yeah, just to see. Sometimes these things are weird, right? They like do the handshake with one device, and even if it's the same device but through a different like method, like yes.
I'll give that a try. But the main point is like it was 90 minutes, 2 hours of toggling stuff, trying stuff, and like Patrick, like to your point, like it's just rituals. Mm-hmm. It's like there was no like, I fixed it, I know what I did. It was like
you feel worse at the end of it.
It's order of operations.
You're glad it worked, but yeah, maybe it might be as specific as that. Where
just,
like actually, Rob, you didn't come out of it. You actually did a thing in the correct order, but it's like this is me doing puzzles in video games. Is just like woo, and like let's hope that lines up when we get through it because I fucking hate doing this. But
it was
like Resident Evil 4 is full of sliding block and like these like very Resident Evil like I feel like what you did.
Oh, I know about sliding blocks.
We'll get there.
Sliding statues
is me doing those puzzles in these types of games where I give it about 5 minutes before I'm just moving them around until I hope it arrives at the shape that makes the game give me the shiny jewel that I can sell to the vendor. And you did that. But unfortunately you came out the other side not being like if it flickers, you're not going to necessarily be able to reproduce other than just time to unplug it and plug it back in. Because I feel like where this is all going is you opening one of your fancy notebooks, taking an entire day off of work and creating flowcharts.
Yes. It's happened before. It will happen again.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, again,
what we
like
should do is fly Cado out, stream that somehow. Bring another PC to stream you figuring out the cable flow on your PC. If you think people wouldn't watch that, I am here to tell you are wrong.
I shouldn't get rid of the old standing desk then. I should put it back together and I should have a little like Cado corner so that when Cado isn't here, Dream Cado can be there.
Yeah.
And like offering me guidance as like a force ghost.
Print out a little stand up.
How much did you end up spending on this thing?
Oh, this switcher splitter thing?
Yeah.
It's like $100.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, no, like the pro grade stuff, there's no upper scale, there's no upper end to it, right? Like there's $3,000 like things that you can do this. But I was like, I just want a little tiny box that does this. This doesn't have. There's a remote that comes with a lot of electronics like this that I associate with shitty build quality. And as long as it did not have that remote, I was going to be happy. It's like this remote is like the mark of Cain, where it's like if they use that remote, which is a very basic standard default, the odds of there being other things that are going to get fucked up real soon, to me, like increase tenfold.
Is it similar to the remote that we have for our HDMI switcher in the in-person setup?
Is a tiny little like palm size or smaller, like little white flat block.
Yeah, hold on. It's this. Here's that little remote, that tiny remote next to it. Okay,
no,
different.
that's a good remote. Is this one has like
you
little
don't mean this one.
Nubbin buttons.
Yes, the nubbin buttons.
Yeah. Oh, hate those fuckers. Anyway. So the other thing is, naturally, I decided to do all this in the middle of the night. So this is me stripping this entire desk, moving it by myself across, like deeper into the room, putting it all back together, thinking deeply about like what is the perfect way to have all this stuff arranged, and then hemming and hawing about that. And the whole process takes about like 5 hours. It's a little different than it had been before, but those little differences made huge differences. It was like it's way nicer now, but now I'm tired and I'm sweaty and I'm angry. The kicker to this was in the process of doing all this, I also come to terms with the fact I had a dream of it will be so tidy here. The cables will be better managed. I will, with space to work, I'll really have a beautifully, put together setup.
You built a studio. Like,
Yeah.
what was your expectation there?
I know. I figured I could do better though. But like, I was just like, I was lying there under the desk with like twist ties and zip ties and the little like cable management trays. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm
Just let it go.
I
Just don't look
I
down
just
there.
stuck some stuff through grommet holes.
Yeah. You use the grommets? You're already like, 80% of the way there. That's fine. That's great. That's enough. You use the grommets.
I contemplated the horrible little decisions the tasker did for TaskRabbit. The little desk hook that they decided should be located in like basically like right in front of you where you sit. Because who doesn't want to have something tucked against their belly as they work, resting in their lap? Lots of little weird choices made, stuff I'm gonna have to unscrew. But at the end of all of this, a couple more things developed. The capture PC now doesn't turn off. When you hit shutdown, it appears to shut down, but like it's clearly still drawing power, and it is like in sort of an idle mode. And when you push down on the power button and hold for 10 seconds, rather than cutting off entirely now, it reboots.
What? Is there like a switch in the back that you can just flick?
No.
You don't have a little
switch, which is very odd, but it doesn't have one.
Oh. I was like, yeah, because like in my newer one, it has like the button in the front, but then it still has a hard binary switch.
How can you tell it's still drawing power?
The ups.
Oh, the ups will tell you.
Yeah, when everything's truly turned off, like the power draw on the ups is like 2% of load. When the capture PC is like idling, it's 20. And it never drops.
What OS are you running there?
Windows 10.
Okay, that should turn off.
Yeah, but Cado, this is all the capture PC is haunted, and it works, but it's clear like something's up with the motherboard or the power supply or the relationship between the two. And people are like, well, why didn't you just fix them? And it's like, because those are the two hearts that like those two things are like the whole, you're going to have to pull the entire fucker apart and deal with it.
Yeah.
So capture PC, cool new issue. But the big thing, the thing I'm really on the fence about now is this OLED flex situation.
You're not on the fence. You just haven't accepted the decision that you already know you need to make.
I'm not 100% sure. So my head is telling me this is not a cost-effective purchase. I should return it. Mm-hmm. The speakers suck. There it is.
That's something that needed to happen. So we needed some audio issues. That'll get that TV returned quick.
This is Rob, do the speakers actually suck? We have no idea. This is Rob working his way towards emotional acceptance.
They suck. They're incredibly sibilant. Like MK noticed immediately. She's like, "This is kind of tinny. This sounds like just regular TV
I don't trust
speakers."
MK either. Like now we need to hire a neutral arbiter. To actually give us information on what's happening in this household. Because at this point, we have now enough information that, like, both of you are in cahoots. So, I just... Anyway, continue. I'm sure
it's called a successful marriage, Patrick. Yeah, we're in cahoots. Also known as love and support.
Unconditional, never-ending love and support. That's keep going.
So yeah, I am left with when I got this thing, it was expensive as hell, but it was like going to check a lot of boxes successfully and like ultimately simplify a lot of things. That's not true. What I have now is a TV screen that bends. Mm-hmm. That's it. Like it is a special product that is like, we're going to take a standard TV screen, but we're going to make it flexible and it will do that. But God help me, I love the flex. I love it. Like, it is. So, to help make my decision, I spent a lot of this weekend playing it just in flat mode, so that I, just to get a sense of how different that feels. It is noticeable, like at desktop distances, like the difference between the flat and curved is like noticeable. Like that is a real thing. And so the weird, like the weird place I'm in with this is it's a very silly device, and it's incredibly niche. But I may still be in that niche, Patrick.
I agree, Mina.
Yeah. Mina knows what's
Yeah,
up.
that was
No, that was an
someone
approving bark.
that was
an
someone in
approving
that
bark.
house yelling bullshit.
No, that was Mina like woofing her approval.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's it is like I wouldn't have bought it. You know what I mean? It's like it's one of those situations where like if I had known that it didn't check all these boxes, I wouldn't have bought it. But the flex turns
This
out
is
to be a
called
better
regret,
feature.
and this is where people send a device back. Like, so it doesn't do what I want. I could get something that got 95% of the way there, and then maybe something else will come across the market, and I could use the money, the difference between those two purchases, and like I could repurpose this display in some other way. But no, this is the Arrested Development like meme. Like, is it working for other people? No, but it might work for me.
See, this is like nobody will ever believe me about the curve. That's like nobody will ever believe like that it like absolutely owns, but it does.
Uh-huh. I've yet to find a voice of support that doesn't live within the structure that you sleep in. Everyone else is raising an eyebrow, but you know what? The only one that matters is the one that loves you, Rob. And so, I mean, who am I to argue with that?
It's true. I have till Friday to make up my mind.
You're not sending that back.
Oh
Not
my
a chance.
God.
Not a chance. Between how difficult you've described
Rob,
how it's going to be,
please.
you are going to
Patrick,
spend.
There's the thing. You've also hit on the other thing.
You're
Once I
gonna make two
unboxed this
podcasts
thing,
explaining why
returning
this
it was
thing
going to be a
can't go.
bitch.
Yeah.
Did you keep?
I mean, you
so-
can hire
did you keep
Task
the
Rabbit
box?
to pack up your monitor.
Oh, I kept the minute I took this out, I was I better keep this box. This
Yeah.
doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But like it is enormous because it's not a flat screen. It's got a whole like built-on housing. There's no assembly required. It just comes in its little case with its little motors. And so yeah, it's a absurd situation. But yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm gonna
Only this
do
could have
with
been
this thing.
predicted.
Pardon?
Yeah, no one could have seen it coming. Right?
If
That's
only
true.
this could have been predicted. If only this could have been supposed.
Well, you got to at least see whether or not the perfect thing exists.
What are those? What are those? What is that? Theater system where the seats move?
4DX.
4DX. We need to get you a 4DX chair, and then you can
So
recreate that fucking, what is it called? Soarin'? You ever been on that? Fucking Disneyland ride? It has a giant curved screen so that it looks like it's just your viewpoint, but you can fly through the air, and then you can return it. Then you'll have done everything you can with that screen.
I mean, kind of you laugh, but I have sent an email. The 4DX people are trying to produce a consumer
Oh
4DX
my god!
Oh,
chair.
fucking God.
And at the bottom of the email, it was like, in theory, at some point, sample units will be available. And I
Wait,
said,
what's this 4DX chair? What's
yes,
it do?
please. Well, 4DX is a high-end movie. Well, high-end maybe on the pricing spectrum. I don't know how people would feel about it, but it's just an evolution of we're going to blow wind in your face, spray you with water. Like you can, I don't know if it does smell, but it like moves, right? So I've had friends that have gone to see like a new Fast and Furious in it. They're like, it fucking slaps. It's so stupid and ridiculous, but it's like being on a roller coaster while watching a film. There is one of them near-ish
God.
us, and I've never managed to line up like movie that would be fun to do that with, and having done it. But
If only
they were at some point. They announced it like at CES. But the problem is, you announce something at CES doesn't mean that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But they said they were going to try and produce like a gamer chair with the 4DX
Oh my
tech.
god.
And do some partnerships with different game. And like I'm a big gimmick person. Like I don't know that I'm gonna spend them. Like I'll take your sample. I don't know that I'll buy it, but you know, if 4DX wants to send me a gamer chair so that I can have water spritzed in my face while I play Resident Evil, I think I would sign up for the privilege.
I only ever experienced it once when they were doing early demos around, I forget what. It was one of the later Pirate of the Caribbean movies. And I the quickness with which I felt sick because it was like, you know, they're pirates, they're on the seas, so they went full tilt on a like rocking, you're on the ocean motion in the chair, and I was like, I could not make it through a whole movie of this. Are
you nauseous by nature, or did it trigger it?
Not even. I think I've been nauseous on a boat.
Does
like
VR
a few
make
times.
you nauseous?
It depends a lot on what it is.
Okay.
Like Half-Life Alyx, I believe would probably make me nauseous, but something more colorful. I don't know. I've never finished Half-Life 2 because I get to and just past the airboat section, and I leave that session where I play that feeling sick. I don't know what it is, but I play like other games that are like, I don't know. It's like a certain palette, a certain type of reticle or lack thereof of reticle, and I will get nauseous, but it's kind of rare. So like, you know, I've been on boats and have been fine. I've been on
that's funny.
I've been on a boat and got sick. But then I've been on boats the rest of my life and been fine. Yeah, but this got me. This was like, oh, I don't want to. It was like a minute like demo that they had just like in the lobby of the theater. I was like, I don't want to watch anything.
Well, also, like,
40X.
I'm trying to keep my eye focused on a screen, and you're like,
Right.
whoa, no, thank you. This is not. This is. It's like we're trying to recreate the experience of trying to read in a car.
Yes.
Which is like that is my kryptonite. Like, I'm not generally a person prone to like motion sickness, but like I will feel like shit if I'm reading in a car. It just doesn't that doesn't go well for me. Speaking of things that didn't go well for me, to sort of try to come to grips with the setup and see how I felt about the screen, I decided to play a bunch of really get stuck into Fortnite and Hunt Showdown.
Wow.
Yeah. And
How'd that go?
not good. I'm a little bit of a panicker.
Sure.
I'm a little bit. I get a bit overwhelmed sometimes when all hell breaks loose. Sometimes I forget that, you know, I have a bunch of other items and weapons that I can switch to rather than like you know, try to reload this thing in a close range encounter.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of that, but like I guess Fortnite just had a major graphics update.
Yeah.
We talked about it. Like, I think when we revisited the game with Natalie, a bunch of that stuff had rolled out.
I'm not sure. Is the new one more recent than that?
They did some.
Maybe. I mean, they're always doing shit to that game, so I would believe you. Also, Rob, you need to download and report back on the Cyberpunk update.
I do.
That is going live.
I do.
Supposed to bring your card to its knees, but it's essentially a peek at like what our games are going to look like, 5-10 years from now.
So Fortnite added a bunch of ray tracing shit in December, is what it looks like. But it is like, it is kind of like, holy shit. Now I am basically inhabiting, like, it's like Patrick, if you got pulled in the fucking Mario movie.
Yeah, it's live action cartoon. Yeah.
Yeah.
The art's great. I've like come around on the Fortnite art quite a bit. So I'm not shocked that, like, given spiffy things like lighting, that really, I bet it shines quicker in a game like that than it does in, like, as we've seen developers try and figure out how does ray tracing work in a, these semi-realistic shooters like a Metros and Cyberpunk. Like, it seems like that has taken longer to show anything that is distinctly impressive immediately to the eyes. Not shocking that it would be like a little quicker with something that is more akin to an animated film.
Yeah. But I will also say, like, kind of exhausting to look at as well in the way of like an animated film where it's like, wow, like everything is just fully
Shiny.
saturated and like glowing, and I cannot. It was like some of this a bit on Twitter, but it's like, you know how in the TV demo rooms they always have fucking videos like tropical fish and shit like floating around, like nature videos of everything punched up to 11, and it's like always tropical fish or something like that. That's what this game looks like. Is you are just it is like tropical fish demo loop the game. And it like looks really good, and then after a certain point I'm like, desaturated tones have a lot to recommend them too. Who doesn't love a good grayscale? Because it is a bit overwhelming. Hunt Showdown, that game, it's an older game now, and
Still a banger.
when you punch everything up, you start really reacting to things like, is that a person or is that aliasing? Or is that texture pop in? But I didn't do myself proud, and I think I might have ruined Galt's day when I was playing the other day.
What resolution? I'm gonna have to text him about that. What resolution were you playing on?
4K,
How large was the screen?
42 inches.
Was the problem the anti-aliasing, Rob, or the fact that you were playing on a 42-inch screen inches from your face, so you were seeing ghosts? I don't think the game was artifacting. I think your brain was.
Who's to say?
Have you considered this?
Who's to say? Look, maybe you're right. You're right, Ren. Is it possible that my setup is so good that I am seeing things to which mankind was not meant to see? Yes. Like, am I seeing secrets that we were not meant to be privy to? I agree.
Human eyes.
And I
were
think
not
that's
made
and I
for
think
this.
that's, you know what? And that's why I sucked. I was so overwhelmed by that that I was just like, it was like every time someone burst through the brush, I had my own eldritch horror moment of like, the ancient evils have awakened, except it's a dude in a top hat with a rifle. It would kill me. But Galt is very good. Matthew Galt is very good at Hunt Showdown, plays a lot of Hunt Showdown, has like hundreds, thousands of hours in it. I have not that many hours in it, and I don't play it for long periods. And I was like, I just try and test this setup, trying to come to grips with it.
Rob coming into the swamp like Shrek, like bang bang.
So we were just getting worked, and I was like, Galt, what I really need to do is I just need to get into some scraps. Like, we're getting killed at the bounties every time. I need to start like shooting people and just getting into fights. And so there's a long telling pause. Yeah, we could play like that. It's not normally how I like to play. But yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from. And Galt, being a saint, like, was my wingman for a session of Hunt Showdown where, like, this is a game where you don't shoot the zombies. You try to stay silent. You try to, like, stealthily
Rob, you were
approach at all
shooting the
times.
zombies.
I was just like, bang. I was calling out other squads. Shooting zombies, shooting dogs, shooting the big brutes. And then we get in, it turns out when you're just like shooting off guns all the time, many squads come to check out what's going on. And so we got in huge Cado gunfights, and
How'd those go?
real badly. But I got what I needed out of it, which was a lot of like hands-on like combat experience. Like, I was starting to do much better in the fights. I was landing a lot more shots. I was still like really having trouble nailing those headshots, like bring guys down in one, but I was like consistently picking people off. So I was getting better, but the problem was I wasn't helping Galt get better. Galt was like fully wasting his afternoon while I was like turning Hunt into a tutorial mode with him sort of held hostage alongside me. I felt very bad.
I've sent Galt a message. I will tell people if I get an answer during the course of this episode. What did Rob do to your ELO? Did you drop a star? So we should know If I learn by the end of this recording, I will pass the information along.
Yeah, it was, and then at the end, Galt was like, there is another mode you could play that I think is maybe more what you're looking for. Quick battle mode is probably where you want to go. Obviously, play that by yourself. You just kind of get dumped in with random weapons, and there's a lot more action.
It's like we dropped Rob off at daycare.
That's very much it. It was like finishing the Hunt Showdown. It's like, this was great. I think you should go play this other mode that's exactly what you need and leave me alone.
This is like when I tell my youngest she's going to school. It's like, no, you're going to daycare, but she likes thinking it's school. And this is what happened with Galt. It's like, okay, Rob, I think what you need, you need to go to school over here. And it's school. You're going to learn stuff. Quick battles. Quickly, you're going to battle, and quickly, you're going to learn things.
Yeah. It was, Galt was very patient. It is
as he always is.
As he is. But to be fair, I was right. Like, I was not getting better in the regular mode, because the encounters we were getting was we'd get to the bounty, and then you'd always end up in a siege, right? Where it's always like you're being stalked by another team that's like right outside the door.
Yeah, it's great.
And so it was real. Yeah, but it's like it's not a lot of running fight. You're not taking a lot of shots. It's all just like you're gonna have a brief like reflex shot at the end of this. It's going to go one way or the other, and that's kind of it. So that was kind of, it was like not enough reps to sort of build up the proficiency.
So, Rob, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Was the problem the accuracy, or was the problem the game feel?
Game feel, game sense, probably more. It was there were a lot of places where like I should like in both Fortnite and this, I need to think a lot more about like what are the other tools in the tool chest right now. Like there's a lot of moments where it's like, don't try to shoot this guy, toss a grenade. That is what you should do. Remember that you have that, chuck it, and like sort of change the nature of the battle that way rather than just shoot it out. So that was kind of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, because that was, it felt good. Accuracy was okay. I need to get better at like, actually landing the headshot rather than like, playing it safe and going for center mass. But beyond that, the big thing, especially in those fights where we were sort of like hold up around a bounty objective in Hunt, it was, there's times where like I have tools to flush people out and I wasn't using them. And I would instead just sort of get in that mode where it's like, we're both going to turn a corner, we're both going to let fly, and we're going to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But in my defense, look, not to throw Galt under the bus here. No, Ren, stop typing what you're typing.
What do you mean?
I am just saying Galt commented that he was also not having the best luck.
It's a team game, right?
Sorry.
It is a team game, but there were a lot of moments where Galt was like, "I'm gonna go out and check that. I'm gonna go out and try to get a look at these guys."
And
he would go out, and then I hear bang.
I cannot believe you are resorting to this.
Sorry. I just want to. I haven't.
No, we do not need to know this.
I won't say. Listen, if you don't want me to say that, I won't say it. However,
say it.
Hunt Showdown has a 5-star elo system, which determines your placement amongst the player base. Let me just pull up the player distribution, just so Hunt player distribution stars. Enter MMR star distribution. Click copy image. Paste image. So, the average player in Hunt Showdown is a 4-star player out of 6. That is where the vast majority of players are. Then 3 stars, then 2 stars, then 1 stars. Galt is traditionally a 4 to 4.5 star player. I've received information that he went from a high 5 to a high 3 over the course of that session. which, if you'll look here, is taking him from about 3,000 to about 2,300 in terms of MMR placement for our dearest Matthew Galt, and 5,000 hunt dollars worth of equipment, which is an astounding drop.
Okay, so Galt was very generous. Galt was very generous.
Galt did you a great kindness.
Galt took me to Galt taught me driving on his Ferrari effectively. So yeah, I could have done better there. But again, Galt didn't have his best day either. That much was clear.
I will say I did just get a text that said it wasn't all Rob.
See?
That's just Galt being nice again. You cannot take advantage of a person like this. We've done an entire segment of you finding ways to explain away your choices, and I'm not going to let you do this one.
Someone has to stand up for Galt.
Yes.
I'm
the line is here.
I'm going to hang out with Galt in the swamp tonight. Galt and I are going to go swamping.
So, I also have to say though, so I thought something that I could blame Patrick for.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually,
you cannot blame me for playing the game that came out several years ago, even though the sequel is out now. That's not on me. That's your choice.
But I played it. I think I was maybe too conservative. I took the wrong conclusions, and you kind of agreed with them, but basically I just was I was not engaging zombies very much in Resident Evil in the police station. I was hoarding ammo, etc. And so
time to run the other way.
Mr. X, or just run past them a lot. But Mr. X shows up, and that is a whole situation, right?
Time to clear the decks. We need some more running paths.
Well, this is the problem. There were no clear paths. There were so many halls now just infested with zombies, and I didn't have time to clear them out because Mr. X was always on my ass.
Mm-hmm.
And so I played through the end of the police station sequence, basically running in terror from Mr. X while trying to do my various quests. And in that process, I never managed to there were places in the police station I never managed to get to, including I got the USB stick that lets you, I assume, unlock the STARS armory. It's a little badge with a trick USB thing on it. I never could make it to the STARS armory because the halls were filled with zombies, and then the shortcut had a bunch of liquors between me and
nightmare,
and I had no shotgun ammo left. None. And because at a certain point to deal with the library where you have to move the bookshelves, I really quickly needed to get zombies off of me. And so I shotgunned them to make space and keep running from Mr. X. And that was all my shotgun ammo. And then when I ran into the liquors later, I'm not getting those things with pistols. That's just not happening.
You're not wasting all of your ammo trying to do that. Doesn't the knife is a knife effective in RE2? I can't remember. It breaks a hold, but it doesn't kill what's holding you. It just knocks them back and gives you a chance to line up a shot. And so I kept thinking at some point this Mr. X madness will end and I'll get to complete my exploration of the police station. That didn't happen. I was okay, I'm sure I'm going to go down to the jails and deal with this bullshit with no ammo. And I was I don't know how this is going to play out because I can see the jail cells are filled with zombies. I can see that. And I have less than a magazine. You mostly run by them, right? If I remember that sequence.
Yes, but the way you get out, Mr. X blocks your other escape.
Yes.
And so you have to do sort of a juke around Mr. X.
Yeah.
But then as you're trying to make your escape, there's still zombies in that hall. There's 3 in that hall. And I only I died many times trying to get through the sequence. Finally, I was did the whole this works in Resident Evil because this is how the game works. Time freezes when you're in inventory. Did the whole like, I was mobbed by zombies and had a whole huge bites taken out of me. Enter the inventory, do the little spray, continue running, get grabbed by 2 more zombies, but this time I'm through. I break clear. And at that point, trench coat FBI lady, Ada, shows up like a pouty Audrey Hepburn. And she saves your ass again. And she maybe kills Mr. X by hitting him with a truck that then explodes. And then we left the police station. And I was like, I think there's stuff back there. Because the games was giving Magnum ammo.
There are rooms that are red.
There's rooms that are red. And I have like a ton of ammunition for a Magnum. And I have not seen a Magnum. My assumption is this in that fucking Stars Armory, which I didn't get to go to because I literally physically couldn't. And I think if earlier in the game I killed more zombies and cleared these hallways a little more effectively, I could have made it. I don't remember where I got the badge from. I don't remember if Mr. X had already shown up by then or if I just didn't beeline directly to the armory. But like, the armory and the weapons locker, I didn't fully extract everything from. I didn't open every safe. And I feel like game-changing things were in there. And I didn't get hold of them. And I'm like, do I restore an older save to try and like complete the police station? Probably not.
Okay,
because
without
I can't
the
handle
Magnum. And I feel you run a risk of like stalling your progress entirely. I think if you try and min-max that again. The tricky thing about how you unlock the Magnum is usually in games, and especially Resident Evil games, like if so when you insert, you have to like you have to use the item on something in order for it to to unlock the armory, but the game doesn't put it back in your inventory. But it's not a one-time use item. So usually when the game doesn't give it back to you automatically, you just assume that okay, well if the game has taken it from me and not put it back in the inventory, it's just meant to be inserted there.
Oh, this is a bit like the Bell puzzle where there's a gear you have to use twice.
Well, it's more that like what I'm telling you is your little USB thing will not go to complete waste. There are other places to use it in the game to get, I think, different, more ammunition at different parts that you'll encounter going forward. But it's all to say, there's also a version where you're frustrated in a different direction, which is that you go through, you get that Magnum, you leave the USB key because you have to literally press X or whatever to like, acquire it again. And it's very common that people have left it behind and then there's no way to go back and get that USB key for the armory based things that show up later.
Okay. It's not
but you would have liked the Magnum. I feel bad that you didn't
I feel like especially
it's a
Mr.
very
X,
satisfying weapon.
And Mr. X chasing me and the need to just like get zombies down fast.
It's one hit kills.
The Magnum
like that's really that is the joy of the Magnum is like, man, fuck it. Just like it's their heads pop and that's what you're hoping for the shotgun blast, that's what you guarantee with the Magnum. So I think you'll be okay. I think the game was going to slow down a little bit for you before things ramp up again. And I don't remember what happens with Mr. X. I can't even tease you with what happens with the big boy.
The next thing that happened was I was chased by a giant gator.
There's the gator.
I forgot that there was that era in video games, but I guess no. Maybe this was if this happens in the original game, maybe this game was a forerunner of this, a trailblazer.
Sewer level, yeah.
The sewer level, but literally the chase where the camera flips around and you're looking at your character from the front and being chased by a thing behind. Like I feel like that was fairly uncommon until like there was a wave of games in the 2010s that did that exact like chase construction. But
watching you escape a boulder in the original Resident Evil remake, an all-timer moment in video game stream history.
So anyway, Patrick, you've also been playing some Resident Evil.
I just a quickly note, I finished up Resident Evil 4, saw the credits on that this weekend. Really high on it, really liked it. There were some things that like stand out a little. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
No, please.
There's some things that stand out a little awkwardly about it for a game that, has all the spit and sheen of a game updated for, 2023. The story stuff is kind of sticks out a little, like, most of the storytelling is happening again through like sort of notes. There's this whole arc in the game where Leon has this like ex commander of his, Kraus, that gets involved with like the cult stuff that's happening, and it's supposed to be like this big kind of emotional moment for Leon and Kraus, and it's just kind of lands a little flatly in the update because there's like absolutely no build up to what's going on here. Like, it's a big moment for Leon Kennedy, and it's a big moment for this Kraus guy. It's not so much a big moment for you as the player because like all of the tension building that's happening is, hopefully you saw a couple of notes that laid a little bit of the groundwork here for it. And then the game is like, haha, this is big. And it's the kind of thing that would require a more structural change to the game if they were to do more of that kind of like groundwork for the characters' journeys. But again, these are not games about journeys or arcs. Really, it nails the part that it needs to nail. And if what it wanted to do was to replicate, that era of storytelling in its full, it does that here, and it's fine. It is effective for what is happening here. But that does seem a little odd by the end of it. It was like, like if there's just like a little more threading. And it's, I guess, a short game. I think I finished it in 20-ish hours, a little bit under. It's like, for a game that feels this long, there is a lack of actual storytelling that is happening for like a world that actually I think would have benefited from a little more of that.
Yeah, I mean, as I've been playing through it, because I've also been playing through it in my free time, I put a little time into it on my vacation. I put a little time into it when I was sick, et cetera, et cetera. I will say, I don't need it. I don't need it to tell the story well. Truly, I'm along for the ride in a way that I'm usually not with a game. Usually, I am I need this to be hitting, but I honestly don't know if I need that from Resident Evil. I think it can be goofy. I don't need it weird.
To hit because look, I don't need it to be. Hey, what we need Resident Evil to be is like gritty and grounded and emotional. I don't want that. I do not want that from my game. It's more just like things feel like they come out of nowhere in a way that could have been threaded a little bit better for the the B-movie tale that Resident Evil 4 is telling. One that only gets more over the top as it goes along in a way that I found very enjoyable. Also, I never bought the Magnum in that game, Rob. I was consistent with your Resident Evil playthrough. I kept selling that Magnum ammo. I don't need it. But it probably would have been fun to have.
I'm pleased that I inspired you, though, to sell ammo. You don't need just get rid of stuff so that you can buy.
So you can buy more nodes.
Things that are more valuable.
Wow, that's just like you, Rob. Getting rid of stuff. That's so like you to inspire someone in this way. To acknowledge you don't actually need a fucking thing. I'm so glad you were able to bring that out of Patrick.
Well, I don't have a
That's
choice
your
in Resident Evil
strength,
4.
Rob.
Thank you. We all, as colleagues, we all inspire and support one another and try and become our best selves. But also Resident Evil 4, you don't have a fucking choice. There's no storage unit for the ammo.
No.
You can only put away healing items and guns. Everything else you have to manage in that screen. And what's great about it is, like, as the game goes on, you can buy briefcases that are larger. And it's like, this time I will spend $80,000 and I will have the briefcase that fits everything. And the game does such a good job of just immediately shoving that back in your face, which is like, bro, in about half an hour, that case is going to be full again. Like, no matter how big that case is, you will find a way to fill it. And that happens every single time. Much like in Dead Space, where it's like, I will simply buy the better armor and then I will not die. In Resident Evil, I will simply buy the bigger briefcase and I will have room for everything. And it's like, no, you'll just have you'll just have more stuff.
Surely I'll have enough gunpowder to turn these 6 large resources into actual ammunition that would conserve space. Surely that'll happen soon.
This egg is worth carrying around.
No.
You just gotta eat that egg.
Gotta eat that egg, Cado.
You just gotta eat that egg.
Eat
I don't
the
want to
egg
spoil
or
it.
throw the egg.
Or throw the egg. And there is the side quest in this game, I think kind of stall out about halfway through and stop being. They just kind of keep doling out the same sorts of side quests. And that was actually one thing that I wish was a little stronger here. It's like, do you want to shoot more blue medallions? It's like, okay. I mean, I'll do it. You marked them on the map, game.
Right.
Like, it's not exactly like you're asking me to do a whole lot. But it's like, do you want to, when I got 3/4 through the game and it gave me like the third time, it's like, do you want to go back through an area 5 minutes away and slash some rats? and then you can get 3 emeralds in exchange for it. I was like, I'm good. I don't need to go cut those rats. Like, I think I'm just gonna keep moving on. But I did one. I'm very excited for Ren if you stick with it. One of the all-time great horror enemies is tucked away in the last fourth of this game, roughly. They're called, I don't want to explain. They're the regenerators. That'll make sense to people who have played the game. They are spectacular. They are scary and weird and require, in a game that, broadly speaking, you shoot at the kneecap or you shoot at the head. The game introducing an enemy that acts fundamentally different. And is not as simple as, hey, we gave him a shield so that, maybe you got to blow away the shield or use a grenade. It is completely different. They don't even give you a way of defeating it early on. It is just usually in Resident Evil games, it's like, hey, an enemy that you can't fight is just an avoidance enemy, right? Like it's a nemesis or a tyrant, and maybe we'll give you a big bazooka at the end that you can take them out with. Here, it's an avoidance enemy until you can get something to deal with them. And even when you deal with them, it is not as simple as, haha, like you have found the vat of acid to take them out. It is more complicated than that. And they're an all-timer enemy from the original game. And it is probably one of the most distinctly improved things they have done in the sequel, is take something that was already great and terrifying and make it so much worse.
They changed it
here. Like aesthetically.
Okay.
And aesthetically is the thing they've done a lot of work with, and I think the aesthetic changes actually influence the design of like how the player deals with them. Like, it is rare that an enemy's appearance and movement both unnerve, and then as a result of the unnerving, influence how you deal with them as a player. And they've done that to just a incredible degree.
Nice.
Here, and it is every time. The one thing I'll say is, it's mild spoilers for Resident Evil 4, but sometimes you encounter these enemies just around, and then other times you come into a room full of body bags, and whether or not you will see one is how good can you just get Leon to crouch on the ground and finagle through a 3D space. Because you never know which one of these body bags is going to dump one of these fuckers on the ground. And you don't want them. You don't want one of these fuckers to appear. And so like the game will very smartly place, so like yellow herbs in Resident Evil 4 extend your health a little bit, right? They're you see one every couple of hours. They're pretty important. You're going to want to track one down. And it's like, what if we just put like a little yellow herb over there? But there's a lot of body bags on the way to that yellow herb. How do you feel about that? And it's just a great temptation that the game plays with.
That's really good. I want to be clear. I'm loving Resident Evil 4. I'm having an excellent time with it. I also think that playing on a hardcore difficulty was the right decision for me in the long term. I think that I had a tough first time through the village.
Well, what you didn't learn, and I don't think we had a discussion about this, was I think when you did the stream, was that you're having trouble with the signposting to the shotgun. But because you're having trouble with the difficulty, what you didn't realize was that you don't have to kill anyone in that opening sequence. It's a time sequence. It's not a kill sequence.
Yes. No, I knew that. No. Okay. I knew that it was a time sequence. I was just trying to stay alive. That was me trying to stem a tide. Renata's strategy for stemming a tide is keep numbers down, deal with problem head on, which let me be clear, was effective once I had the shotgun. Once I had the shotgun,
you can watch how well that worked on twitch.tv/waypoint. You can see how effective it was.
You can see how effective it was.
How good it worked.
I mean, Rob, in my defense, the second I had the shotgun, I got it on the first try. That was not like Ren really struggles with the shotgun. It was, I didn't have the shotgun. It works perfectly once I have the shotgun.
I ran in a circle, found some eggs, and just waited for that big old bell to ring. And then waltzed over to that shotgun and
Congrats.
Was a king.
Congrats.
Was a king.
But the game has been great from there in terms of balancing and me feeling like the exact correct amount
it's
of
awesome. And she's being great at it, just out of frame.
All right.
So it's I'll be excited for for you to get to the have you gotten to the lake sequence where you get a boat?
Oh yeah, lake sequence done.
The lake is a real highlight. Like it's the closest the game gets to not open world, but you get like real choice over what do you want to do for the next couple of hours. Yeah. And there's a sequence in the opening hours of The Last of Us Part 2 that functions similarly, where you get to this part of, I think, Portland or Seattle, I forget but you know, it's an area where the player gets like to spend a bunch of time in kind of a hub area. And I love games that drop you into sequences like that. It's like a reason, like my favorite Uncharted game is I forget what the one was, but it was like the not one of the numbered ones, but it was the spinoff that is a whole hub and spoke model. And the lake sequence is very strong in Resident Evil 4. There's only one of them. Everything else is pretty, you know, go to next area sort of thing. And I wish that game had a little more of it, because I just like being like, oh look, there's a little exclamation point. I'm going to go over here and like have a little sequence that I have there, and then boat my way over to this other spot. And you never quite get that again. And it's always, every time I get a sequence like that in a game that doesn't normally have that sort of stuff, it gets the vibe of an open world without like having to go all the way there. It's just giving the player a little more freedom of movement.
Yeah, that was a very fun sequence. I liked it a lot. I also did the little village defense, not the village, the little like hut cottage defense you do with Louise. Yeah. That was a very, 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 very fun sequence that like really pushed me in a way that I liked a lot.
Yeah. Excellent game. Resident Evil 4, 2 thumbs up. You know, they stripped out the horniness at the end, which fair. It didn't feel right. But if you are unaware of the horniness at the end of Resident Evil 4, look up the original ending to Resident Evil 4, and then they changed the line in the new one. And I get why they arrived there, but I don't know. There's something about that I miss, even if I agree culturally with the change.
After the show, I'm going to look that up and see just how incriminating this entire exchange was. I'm gonna have to, Cado, maybe before we post this episode, just look up that sequence.
Sometimes a character shoots their shot. It's sometimes a character shoots their shot. That's what I'll just say.
That's beautiful. All right, so before we get out of here, we should take a little dip into the question bucket. Remember, you can send us all your questions at gamingadvice.com with the subject line questions. So a while ago, somebody did write in about Star Citizen. Alex from Denver writes,
quick dip, you warned us about this question being long like earlier in this podcast. Sorry, continue. Star Citizen question.
Spiritually it's a quick dip. In reality it's a in-depth plumbing, but we'll see. Hey, Waypoint crew, first time, long time. A while back, Star Citizen was mentioned a couple times within a few weeks, and the overall vibes toward it on the pod ranged from dismissively laughing about it to cautiously laughing about it. I'm not going to proselytize about the next coming of space simulation Jesus, but I think gaming news should be discussing Star Citizen Cloud Imperium games more seriously due to the unique nature of how it's funded as well as its overall ambitions. I backed the project in 2013, 10 years ago, for $50 and have yet to play any part of the game so far. GPU prices haven't helped with that. What I have done is watch nearly every behind-the-scenes video of the game's development, and as a game designer myself, I find the development of the game to be fascinating, and the work being done at CIG is unlike anything I've seen from any AAA developer. Obviously, this project hits the headlines when it hits insane funding goals, but the reality is there is just a large fan base for this game and a small subset that is ultra wealthy. They continue funding the creation of Star Citizen because they believe the 700 plus developers worldwide across 5 studios, several partner studios, are working hard to create the most insane sounding space simulation game ever. There is a lot that's playable: flying, combat, mining, bounty hunting, exploring, multiple mission types, etc. But what is truly exciting to me is that they are slowly, very, very slowly, solving problems that no other game has even attempted. For example, last year they implemented persistent entity streaming, where you can drop any object in a random spot on any planet or moon, leave and come back next week, and it will still be there. Their current big challenge is allowing all players in the MMO to seamlessly switch between game servers on demand without loading screens. This may sound familiar because of the because the premise of the game, the premise of the game that the Mythic Quest character Poppy describes during the finale of season 2 is exactly that feature. I and most backers on the Star Citizen subreddit are pretty fed up with the slow progress and promise dates that slip away. The separate single-player game, Squadron 42, has been promised for years now, and there is no release date in sight. All this is valid criticism, but them not hitting their release dates aren't the most interesting aspects of the game. Progress is being made on their most ambitious goals, and I don't have any doubt that CIG will continue working on these features until they're done, be that this year or in 10 more years. I have that faith because they aren't beholden to any publishers, and because this is the most transparent development of any AAA game in history. It's been able to continually incorporate player feedback in its design, something I think should be celebrated. With all that said, here are my questions. Do you think a AAA game should have Star Citizen's level of transparency? Are players always naturally going to be skeptical of ambitious titles due to being burned too many times? Cyberpunk, Spore, All Points Bulletin, Tabula Rasa, etc. Lastly, are you all in your positions in game media afraid of touching on or delving into such a controversial game's development? Love the podcast. Thanks for all your nuanced discussions of difficult topics. Alex from Denver. So there's a couple things. One, like Alex, I think you might have imbibed a little bit of Kool-Aid. Just as I like, I think there's a little bit of like. You're already pretty deep in the Star Citizen well of like following all this stuff, which like means you're speaking from pretty deep in that fan base. But I'm not actually sure that does mean like the development is necessarily as like revolutionary or singular as they make it out to be. Like a lot of what they're going to be doing is explaining, when you're explaining to people like, hey, where the fuck is my game? The answer is always going to be, let me tell you what these amazing problems we're solving to make the greatest space game ever made. It's always going to be a fascinating thing, and it's going to be like you're going to say, it's the nature of the problems we're tackling that just means this is unprecedented. To that, I think one reason that I think a lot of mainstream game journalism has kind of stepped away from Star Citizen is because like, to understand the state of play there, I think you do have to be pretty far. There's a lot of research now. There's 10 years of like promotion and release updates around this.
I was like, it kind of came out the other side, right?
Yeah.
Like I think there was a lot of attention paid on it because it was what seemed like a money pit, without much to show for it. But now has developed its own community that is self-interested in what is happening there. But most people, like outsiders, and I think you can say that's reporters, you can say whoever, have sort of just accepted it's kind of just over there in the way there are lots of games that are just over there. It's a game that predated like, or is alongside a lot of like early access, green light, things like that. And now feels less weird to exist in that space because games can just sort of be perpetually in a state and arrive or not arrive at that. But when it was announced, the pitch was like, we're making XYZ, and it didn't deliver any of those things. And it's in midst of delivering some versions of those or other things. And if the community's happy, that's kind of the nature of game development these days. Like that's sort of all that matters. Right. Like it doesn't really matter. Like if I get my Star Citizen that like Chris Roberts showed to me in a GameSpot office, 10 years ago, that game doesn't exist. They stopped making it. They're making something else. And I think that speaks a little bit to sort of the maybe indifference or kind of joking attitude toward it. But I think more indifference these days. I think there's less acidity pointed towards it because I think people just kind of gave up. What's there to make fun of? Like, it's just off doing a thing now.
Well, it does, like, the parts of it, there are parts of it that are clearly like, this isn't a scheme. Like, there's parts of the game that are coming together, albeit very slowly. But at the same time, so it's like it's less of a thing that you have to cover as why are they raising all this money, which I think was a valid question about 8 years ago, right? Where it was like, what is going on with Star Citizen? There wasn't much to show for it except all these lavish, effectively like brochures for more in-game ships that they kept selling to people. Like it started to look really sketchy when there was like just nothing to show from the game, and then it was a lot of selling timeshares on the moon, effectively, is what the business model was there. And we moved on from that, but it has sort of become a thing where, yes, it is just over there. It's got its community that are largely happy with how it is coming together, or at least understanding. And then a lot of other folks, I think I'm in this boat, is if this ever comes together and someone says like, hey, Star Citizen is like finished, and it's a game-ass game, it's not just a bunch of disconnected modules, and it mostly kind of works, I'll be very excited by that. I'll be very intrigued.
I want to play the big space game, right? Like we were just like talking about our desire for, like, we had Squadrons talk that happened in between, like a part of the record.
Probably try to insert that somewhere. It was good enough,
figure it. Okay, so now I'm gonna look. Know that it was substantial enough that if it's natively fit into the podcast, that edit idea occurred right here at the end of the podcast while we're talking about Star Citizen, because that is a game that they don't really make anymore, right? Like the big budget space drama, I don't know, kind of went out with Wing Commander, right? It kind of went out with Chris Roberts stopped making them, and replaced with things like No Man's Sky, right? Or Elite Dangerous, which are just sort of different beasts entirely. Although I guess, Star Citizen promises to be all things to all people, right? Like that is like, hey, we've got your big budget single, Mark Hamill's back, baby. And that's the one I'm waiting for, is like, I would love to play one of those games. I just, don't see any evidence that 47 or whatever that game is called, is on the horizon anytime soon.
Yeah, it's and even if it is, like, there's never been very much to suggest that the fiction of Star Citizen, just as an aside, like, it's never looked very compelling in terms of the pitch for the universe. But to the questions, should a AAA game have Star Citizen's level of transparency? I think transparent, like, one, like, a lot of Star Citizen transparency is about like sort of filling a role as marketing as well. So I think like it's a odd sort of transparency.
It's not a Double Fine documentary, right? Like, if you want transparency, go watch Psych Odyssey, like the 30-part examination of making Psychonauts 2. What they are providing here is restrained. You're right. It's marketed transparency. It is insight into the process. Like, it's more than you're going to get for most games, which are a black box. Arguably, games are a black box for a reason, because time and time again, we have seen example of video game fans being unable to accept what games look like early. Like, the process of making games is messy. And so I don't know that like necessarily they can be trusted with being able to handle that sorts of information. But we have now examples of full spectrums of different levels of what we call transparency. I just don't know that I'd be careful how I'm using that word with Star Citizen, as you point out, Rob, because if you just want to see how the sausage is made, like, go watch that documentary. Like, it's ugly. Like, making games is hard. And I don't know that you're getting that level of insight here necessarily.
And also, my thing with like looking at the Star Citizen stuff is like, what is that doing for you? Like it just serves a fundamentally different function. This like transparent. I'm using the word transparency here really because again, I don't think that's what this is, but like it's serving a fundamentally different function than it would for other AAA games, right? Like other games are not sold to the consumer on a promise like this, right? Like in the way that Star Citizen is. Like, sure, games are like pre-ordered and like announced, and there's a marketing machine behind them, but like Star Citizen, I also think like calling Star Citizen a AAA game is like weird, because that's not. It is fundamentally operating under like a different development pipeline and like a different mode of like funding, a different mode. It's a different business altogether, right? Like it feels like a weird comparison to even make to me, because Star Citizen is so far removed from anything that a AAA publisher is going to ever make, because that's just how they work, and how the industry works like broadly. I just don't feel like the comparison point you're looking for is Warframe. Warframe does this because Warframe is not a AAA game. It's this weird thing happening over in the corner that is like playing to a very particular, deeply engaged and committed audience that believes in like the project, right? Like Call of Duty is never going to do this. The Last of Us, Naughty Dog is never going to do this, but like Digital Extremes is right now. the Tarkov devs are probably doing things like this because they just operate in like a fundamentally different economic mode than like other things that fall into like the AAA terminology.
I think where there's someone's being swept up in transparency here is also sort of having it being more of a conversation with the potential audience for a game that is not finished. And I think this is the other weird thing is like transparency is cool. The soliciting player feedback it's such early stages as so many systems are being built from the ground up. Like that's also kind of another thing. Like, is that a good thing? I don't know. If the game works out, then I guess we'd say it will. But certainly, I think it's a stretch to say at this point that, you know, for a development cycle that's gone on, 10 years, 10 some years, it's a stretch to call this like a success or a template. And we don't know how this stuff is going to pan out in the end, but certainly in the meantime, it seems like Chris Roberts's tendency going back throughout his career to have a propensity for like catastrophic feature creep combined with what happens when you go to a community and say like, well, what do you think this game should have? Those two things, like, do I think games should operate like that? Probably not. I think probably more scoping is generally a good thing. And I think maybe some of the way Star Citizen has come together has precluded the types of decisions and compromises that like you would find in the AAA model where it's like, here's your budget, here's a date ideally we need to hit, go execute this. Star Citizen hasn't done that. Maybe that'll prove to be awesome that they didn't, but in the meantime, you know, it's 2023 and the game exists in pieces.
And that last, game development, so much happens in that last 5 or 10% of however you want to define that. And Star Citizen hasn't even hit that. And so it's like, it's one thing to have a bunch of individual pieces that feel good, connecting all that stuff and making it flow. I mean, that's where a lot of the rubber meets the road.
Like a lot of games when they do like an early access thing, generally call that. Those are usually betas by that point. And Star Citizen is on Alpha 3. Like they're
too cowardly to call it a beta.
Yeah, like
Alpha 3.
This is where and they're like, they're just being truthful as to the fact that like this is how far we are from it being a complete game, right? Like the most recent Alpha 3.18 just dropped March 10th. So it's not even to what they would be comfortable calling a beta, right? And it's how many years now? I don't remember when I backed to that Kickstarter.
10 years. I was a child when people were first making jokes about Star Citizen.
It's the Kickstarter October 18th, 2012.
I was just
pre-production of the game started in 2010. So if you want to stretch it back a little further, then
oh my god.
The other thing I'll say is that like I also don't think that, this level of transparency is particularly useful to like even people who like games broadly for the vast majority of titles. Like if BioWare right now released a video that was like, hey, here's how our internal dialogue system works for like managing like state management. No one would fucking care. I would care. Renata, someone who like spent her sick time and spent like her vacation watching GDC talks about narrative design, Renata's gonna love that. Renata's gonna love to know how they do their state management. But like the vast majority of people are not, those systems are going to be fucking alien to the vast majority of people in a way that like, here is the feature we are making for Star Citizen is a fundamentally different proposition that you are showing people because like that is a game being sold on the insane number of features that it has as opposed to like the kind of focus that many like broad reaching wide audience AAA titles are going to have. I think it's just a different relationship.
Rob, concerning information here from the Wikipedia page on Squadron 42, based on to bring this whole conversation fully looped around. Squadron 42 is being developed by the Foundry 42 studio under the supervision of Chris Roberts' brother Aaron, who had already worked with him on the Wing Commander series and led the production and development of Privateer 2: The Darkening.
Hell yes.
Unfortunate.
But
Or-
that's separate. Like if I bought a ship for Star Citizen, I don't get that's a different game now, right?
Yeah, it was originally part of the pitch that it was going to be like a single player story within that world, and maybe it'll get slotted. You know, who knows? But it is something that I think is now meant to be an extended, part of the universe.
Right.
Like someone like me plays a Squadron 42 and then is maybe curious about Star Citizen more broadly.
Mhm.
But that game, like they kept announcing release dates, and then it went dark in 2020, and they just said we're not going to show it until. Well, that's the funny part. Like I don't know what they've shown privately. Maybe this person can write in, and I'm sure they've shown some stuff. But like broadly speaking, they then went the traditional development route. Was like, you know what? Yeah, like maybe we should just like go make the thing, and then we'll show it to you when we made it.
Yeah, I like to the last part of this question. Are gamers always going to be skeptical of ambitious games? No. Well, yes and no. Like people are always going to be excited about big ambitious games, and then they'll also be like, big ambitious games tend not to totally work out. But that doesn't stop anyone from being excited. Like no matter how many times we burn our hands on stoves like this, we're always going to be like, but maybe this time it'll work out. Maybe this is.
But
gonna
maybe
be the
what
one
if they
that-
actually did it?
Yeah,
Maybe this time
so-
they're saying it because they figured it out ahead of time.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be like ambition and skepticism are always going to sort of be hand in hand here. Jambo writes, Point fam. G'day, long-time listener, first-time question here. Have any of you ever heard of adding a tiny amount of salt to a cup of coffee or even gone so far as to try it? When I say I mean tiny, I mean in the ballpark of like 1/16 or 1/8 of a teaspoon, literally just a pinch of salt. Depending on which supermarket blend I'm slumming it with, the 1/16 can make or break a good cup of tea for me. A good cuppa for me. I find it gives a nice savory caramel-esque roundness to the flavor. Let me know what you think. FCGH, Jambo.
So, I spent the last week doing a lot of saltwater gargles on account of the strep throat, rocking my poor body, my poor Victorian child form. And I will say, I did take some sips of coffee immediately after doing my little saltwater rinses with some Stoke, fridge iced coffee. And you know what? That was smooth as hell. It was delicious. I had a nice time other than the pain.
Yeah.
But I had a nice time. And you know what? I'll put salt in anything. A little bit of salt, toss it on anything. It'll probably help. A little bit.
I've definitely
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I've definitely heard the theory that actually milk and sugar are attempting to mask things that could be balanced by salt instead. Like, but I've never actually tried it. I've always been curious, but not. I don't know. I like my milk and sugar latte coffee. You know,
You might still like it with salt
thing.
though. Like kind of
Right.
thing about salt is it brings out flavor across the board, right?
Yeah.
Like almost everything's a little bit better if it's properly salted. So I totally buy that. Like, you know, I do know there are people who like always make a point of like putting a pinch of salt in their coffee. I just haven't done it because I never remember to, and also it's like I don't know. I just
like I'm not
I
having
wanna salt
I'm
my
not having
coffee.
problems
Yeah.
with my coffee already.
yeah,
Like I enjoy it the way I make it anyway, so it's not like
but maybe it could be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who could truly say? Maybe we should try it.
Maybe it could be better. Something that Rob has in common with Star Citizen.
The Star Citizen of people.
You know what? That's actually true. I think that's accurate.
Amazing.
It's very regrettable, but sadly, it's like, which video game are you? I'm Star Citizen.
How's the feature creep going, Rob?
It's
Thanks for the podcast title, by the way.
hang on. No, I can't be. I shouldn't be. I gotta put my chest out for this.
Yeah.
Look,
Own it.
I have built the best office anyone's ever seen. Like people have, for years, people try to solve all the problems of having an office that's for writing, for like streaming, for productivity, but also a good place to hang out and reflect, a good sanctuary from the world. And nobody's been able to do it. There's too many obstacles. There's technical obstacles to creating the perfect office. But I have solved them. I, Rob Zachney, have solved all of them. And if you will sponsor me, if you will just send me for the low price of $150, I will send you a photo, just yours, of my office, and that'll be your photo of my office.
Wow.
You know what? If there's one thing this podcast definitely has, much like Star Citizen, it's a lot of transparency into the development of Rob's home. It is. It's some would say a staggering, almost disarming amount of transparency into the way that Rob's home kind of changes and develops over time.
If anything untoward was going on, why would I just tell you?
We would know.
Yeah. All right. So Evan writes, this is regards to Terranil and some of the stuff that came up there. This is a different perspective. Evan writes, as somebody who has studied conservation biology, I want to add a balancing voice to Ren's commentary on Terranil. Not to say she is off base. I haven't played the game yet, but it sounds like its message might benefit from a different emphasis. Ren mentioned that damaged ecosystems are often best left alone. She's not wrong, but I want to add that I wish it was true more often. There are many examples of damage that will resist the establishment of a healthy ecosystem. Just for instance, a dirt trench will gather water like a river, but will only erode straight down. Natural waterways meander back and forth, flowing to create various aquatic environments which support various species that evolve to be in balance. Speaking broadly, I believe it is responsibility to make our trenches more like rivers because we are the only ones who can. Conservationists use the word stewardship a lot, and I was touched by the quote. They don't say it to mean that they dominate nature. To them, it means that they serve nature. As scientists, engineers, artists, and organizers, with humility, care, and hard work, people can act as a keystone in some places where other species can't. If we do it well, someday we may be able to hand that stewardship back to the species who served the greater system originally. For many of them, time is too short for us not to try. Thanks for your time, Evan. Yeah, I mean, I certainly like that is a different. It's one of the things contextual. Like sometimes it does feel like just as a species, we're like totally in faulty towers mode where we try to fix one thing and we create four more problems. But there are forms. I do know there's forms of like ecological damage we've inflicted. Like you can't totally back away and it will just fix itself. It requires some sort of intervention. But at the same time, I think about I don't know if it was as much a thing. I think they stopped emphasizing this when you were growing up, Ren. But I think for Patrick and I, we often heard about the evils of the 6-pack plastic ring thing. Where it would end up
those
in a
poor
river.
Ducks, those poor turtles,
ducks, turtles, fish caught in the And so there's emphasis on like just all these things that end up in these waterways and end up trapping animals and harming them. That's kind of true, but one of the things that I've also heard come up is sometimes simply removing that stuff also fucks up because like once it's in there, it ends up kind of being part of the ecosystem, right? Like once that river has like a big heap of shit in it, animals learn to adapt to the big heap of shit being there. And if you go clear it, you end up like kind of damaging what has become the ecosystem of the river. And so like I do think there's that in play as well, where it's like the context can be complicated.
Yeah, I also think that I think my frustration with Terranil has more to do with its techno fetishism than anything else. Right? Like I think that was the point that and I'll admit this is a mistake from what I was discussing the game initially. I think that like fundamentally the thing that bothers me is the techno fetishism more than anything else. It is like the way in which it becomes a kind of magical thinking about our ability to touch the world and remove ourselves from it perfectly. That is the thing that left me a little bit uncomfortable with Terranil, because I like know people who I know a lot of people in my life who studied environmental science and like urban design, and like one thing that spending a lot of time around environmental science people and like urban design people will kind of led me to realizing was that like there is no touching the world without consequence, right? There is no way to like interact with space and like the built environment and unbuilt environment without actually like doing a serious thing and leaving a mark of yourself there in a significant way. And I think that like ultimately that is my frustration with Terra Nil more than my previous concern about it struggling to like do environmentalism right. It's more that I think that, you know, Terra Nil probably does conservation and the process of conservation. It does that well, or does that interestingly. And yeah, that was definitely a mistake on like my first time talking through the game. So thank you for like that additional context. I think it's like very useful.
Email from Phil from DC. Hello, WayDHD gang, and also Patrick. I started physical therapy this year, where I'm constantly asked to do 20 reps of different exercises. It turns out my attention span isn't up to the challenge of counting to 20 without losing track. So I usually do the exercise until I get tired. Then I do 3 more reps and assume I finish close to 20. What counting related activities do you struggle with? When making coffee for more than one person, how do you make sure you did 6 scoops of coffee grounds? Not 5, too weak, or 7, too strong. Keep it breezy, Phil from DC. Okay, this like hit me where I live, because here's the thing. Sets of 10 I can do. Anytime I'm given an exercise chart where it's like do 20 or 30 reps, my mind wanders off consistently during, especially like if you have to pay attention to form, which you do in physical therapy. Like if you do the exercise wrong in physical therapy, you might as well not have done it, and sometimes you would have been better off not doing it. No. So you got other things you're going on in your head, but also like there's a lot of shit that's just boring where it's like nobody likes doing no, people do like doing planks. I don't. They're miserable.
I love doing them.
Like once I'm like in the position I've assumed the form, and like now I'm just sort of waiting it out. As hard as it is, my mind still wanders, and I'm still like thinking about other stuff, thinking about like what to do later, work stuff. And then I'm like, how long have I been doing this? I have no sense. And if I've been trying to count seconds, I'll be like, wait, how did I end up back on 30? Like, did I just like start counting randomly somewhere? And so that's me. Like it is one of those like almost embarrassing parts of this where I'm like, yeah, I too, doing an exercise, struggle mightily to count to 20.
It 100% like depends on the length of the thing.
Yeah.
There's if it's fast enough, I'm fine. But the thing that gets me is taking a single cup, like measuring cup, filling it with water at the sink, and then moving it over to a pot. And I need like 6 of those. I get lost around 4. I'm like, was this the 4th one? Have I moved back to the sink a 4th time? Or is this the 5th one? Did I miscount here? But like, yeah, it depends on how quick, like a single, like, I don't know, bicep curl, right? Like that's a short enough action that I can keep track of that. But it's just like, if something takes more than like 2 seconds between counting up the next one, I'm gone. Like that's it. I have no clue how many are in there. There's probably 5 cups of water in this pot. I'm not sure.
So this is where you get the Renata Price school of working out. Which is I can't count for shit. I'm not going to pay attention to that. I don't know how many reps I've done, which is why I exclusively work out to failure. When I am working out, if I'm like doing an exercise, like I will just go until failure, like consistently, because I'm not going to keep track of that. And also like, I don't know, I'm not going to feel like I did it if I don't go to failure, you know?
This is why I found I like really jived with, what's it called? Ring Fit, because it counts for you.
Yeah,
it counts for you.
Yes,
that was fucking great. That was awesome for me.
There are lots of I mean, there's a whole. I mean, the way I act, other than running, is like we do the Apple Fitness stuff because it's just bundled with the other stuff that we get through them. But like their classes are fantastic. Like, and they run the gamut of. It just seems like this addresses maybe like a core for your core. is just like, I have 10 minutes. Here's what I do. Watch, follow, go at my own pace. And even if you go off of their pace, you're still broadly doing, you know, what the instructor has in front of you. So I don't, even though I don't have the counting issue, for me, it's like a time management issue. And so it's like, I pick this thing, it's 20 minutes. I know what I have between when I have to get to start work or pick up the kids. And it's like, okay, 20 minutes. I don't, however good or bad that workout is, it's 20 minutes. And then I'm done.
I can definitely make my legs stop working in 5 minutes.
It's though is like I'm rusty on all this, but my understanding is like going to failure is good for some things but bad for others.
Going to failure is really good for building strength.
Right.
Like endurance. Like it's good for building strength. Not as much for building like muscle mass.
Right.
It depends. But also that's mostly what I work out for is like maintain strength. And so going to failure generally works for me. Does it make me a little freak? Yes, it does. Does it? Is this also why I struggle to get back into making working out a habit? Yes, it is, because when I go to failure, I will be fucked up for the next day.
Yeah.
Until my body gets used to consistently being pushed to failure with particular muscle groups, at which point its recovery speed like kicks up. But once I'm in it, I'm in it. Once I've rebuilt the routine, I can maintain it for a very long time because my body just gets used to going to failure and then having to continue going about the day after that point.
All right, our last email here comes from Chase. Chase in Chicago. Hi, Waypoint crew. The MLB The Show discussion on the pod stirred up a lot in me as a baseball video game fan going back. You actually hit on one of the catalyzing events of baseball video games, perhaps without realizing it. EA and the NFL killing NFL 2K. 3 months after the NFL EA exclusive contract was announced, 2K and MLB announced an exclusive third-party licensing deal to start in 2006. EA's MVP Baseball series, which was widely thought the better of the two games, would have to come to an end, but MLB would continue to license first-party games by the console manufacturers, allowing Sony to continue developing their MLB games. MVP Baseball actually tried to stay alive by becoming a college baseball game, but it just didn't sell without the MLB license. MVP's still rather beloved, and there's still a mod and roster update scene for MVP 05. MLB 2K didn't really get much better after MVP was gone. MLB The Show did, and that deal went poorly enough that 2K had investor calls where they'd have to mention the series was losing money, but they had a contractual obligation to make these and would cease when their contract ended.
They had to keep making games after they no longer wanted to.
It somehow got a 1-year renewal at the end, which everyone kind of chalks up to MLB being desperate enough to want anything on the Xbox 360 that they threw some money at 2K for another year. MLB 2K13 was basically the previous year's game with new rosters, but somehow buggier, and it lost an online league mode from the last game. With 2K done, MLB started publishing and eventually developing that RBI baseball reboot in order to have MLB games on non-Sony platforms, until finally striking that deal that made the show cross-platform. Naturally, my question for each of the crew: have you had a thing that you loved that died for absolutely petty reasons that barely had anything to do with the thing itself? Thanks, love the pod. Chase in Chicago. I mean, I feel like this happens in TV all the time, like TV and films, but
especially these days. Yeah.
I mean, like, sports games are so, like, there are so many sports franchises that just do die because they lose the licensing or they just kind of fade away. Like, what was the cause of death for Front Page Sports? That for me is the Front Page Football. That's my big question. Why did you die?
You sounded so sad, Rob.
These were really cool. It was a really cool sports franchise series.
Why must the sports franchise die?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, oh gosh, yeah. Okay, I actually here's me. Lucas had like Lucas Games, LucasArts, whatever name it went by, was an amazing game studio and like groundbreaking work in adventure games, space combat sims, all sorts of things. Tons of cool games coming out of Lucas throughout the 90s. And then for the prequel era, they kind of blew up the entire concept of how they licensed and made Star Wars games, and they farmed it out pretty extensively. And they effectively like kind of blew up Lucas in short order, just from like a shift in strategy and approach to like wanting to just license these things rather than make them in house. So like from my standpoint, like the way it all unfolded was LucasArts was one of the best game studios in the industry. And then in shockingly short order, they had basically like scorched the earth, for that developer. And it's scattered and people went their separate ways. You still got Star Wars games, but I don't think like the various pieces of LucasArts have been as like creatively productive or like had as consistent output separately as they did under the umbrella of LucasArts. Like I feel it was like one of those really special places that like hit a high quality bar and did the license stuff you'd expect, and then also let people do weird, goofy, cool shit like anything by Tim Schafer and all of that. And it was just kind of blown up for no good reason. And I think you sort of draw a line from that to the fact that it still feels like Star Wars isn't as big in video games as you would expect, because they never did sort of get the formula right after that. It sort of culminates in the disastrous EA deal. But yeah, that's kind of my take is like they done the thing. They had created a legendary game developer in-house to work on Star Wars stuff and a bunch of other stuff. And then it always kind of felt like they just didn't want to do that anymore and killed it.
Well, funny enough, EA is probably for good reason, constantly pointed to as the publisher that mishandled so many different studios and acquisitions over the years. That I don't know if I'd necessarily call it petty, but it's definitely like adds up to feel that way when you acquire X number of studios, and it seems like that's going to be the death of it, as opposed to getting access to resources and not having to worry about payroll as much. But EA certainly earned that marker over the years.
I'll never forgive them for what they did to Titanfall.
God.
I'll never forgive them for what they did to Titanfall. Never.
Oh,
Fuck.
Yeah, it's a good example.
That's
Titanfall
that's a
2,
really good
like,
example.
Got completely screwed.
Yeah.
I've been trying to think of this, and it's like it doesn't really quite fit because it didn't die, but it almost did. And I've been playing a lot of it recently. Actually, is Netrunner. Just disappeared for still mysterious reason. I don't think that there's ever been in like official line on like why the license got weird with that, or like who ended up being the like.
Yeah.
Was it that Wizards pulled it? Was it that FFG didn't renew it? Like what happened there? Who could say? No one knows. I haven't found any reasons. Luckily, the fan run organization that has picked it up has been making really good cards, so it's not dead, but it's harder to play when there's like a less of a community because it doesn't have like there's like no marketing like budget behind this, like the way that FFG has for their games, like there's less of a structure there. So like there's a meetup in New York. Like New York is big enough that we've got like a solid 20 people who will like play Netrunner on any given other week.
But Netrunner was like thriving.
Yes.
And
here's the thing too, is like this is another reason why it doesn't technically fit, because I came to it after it died, technically. So it wasn't a thing that I was into and then they got killed. But I still do feel like, man, I wish I could have come into it when it was at its like height. Although like apparently one of the like recent Worlds tournaments was like 50 entrants off of like how big Worlds used to be yet under the FFG days or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like it's getting there. They're rebuilding. Everyone go play some Netrunner. It's good.
And that will be a wrap on today's episode of Waypoint Radio. If you want more from Waypoint, you can follow us on Twitter at Waypoint, Facebook, and YouTube, Waypoint Bias. You can follow me on Twitter at Rob Zachney. Ricardo, where can people follow you?
At @A_Cado_appears.
Patrick.
At Patrick Klepek.
Ren.
You can follow me on Twitter at Ren or Raven.
And you can check out what we published on waypoint.vice.com. And thanks to Waypoint Plus, we've been able to have a bunch of fun streams lately. Cado and I crushed it at Motorsport Manager last week. You can check out our incredible victory, our flawless win. And yeah, no, it was extraordinary. I think we did.
It was a
we did
very good
tremendous.
win. It was a very good win.
Yeah.
We've got some talking to do with Gaspar, though.
We do. And coming up soon, we're going to be, I hope maybe Patrick, you and I play a little Dead Space before I maybe return this TV.
We'll try and squeeze it this week before you hit your deadline.
Yeah. And for our Waypoint Plus listeners, we had the Sports Pod come back to talk about the Cubs with Jason Kevler, and that should also hit the main feed.
It'll hit it soon after I told Cado you need to upload it.
It's up. It hit up. I don't know.
And you've already enjoyed it by the time you listen to this podcast.
Probably.
I hope you loved it.
But hopefully people like we're playing with the format as we, escape the NFL's velocity and like in the deep of its off season. But I think we've quite liked having a guest come on to talk through a sport that, Rob and I both observe and are interested in, but it is nice I feel like feel very authoritative about the NFL and then have like things we can say about other sports, but are a little bit out of our depth. And it's been nice having other folks come on to kind of walk us through that. So hopefully we can do more of that going forward.
Hopefully, as this Bulls run takes off, we'll have lots more basketball talk as America catches.
We're gonna have
fever.
to, Rob. If they make it out of the play-in tournament, then we will have to. We will know the fate of that by next week. So,
if that sounds good, or you just want more Waypoint, you can go to waypointplus.com and subscribe. Not only do you get access to our premium feed, but you're also helping support Waypoint and everything else we do here. Our merch store, is that back up? WaypointGeneralStore.com.
I don't think
it's being looked into.
Yeah. No, that's it's still a parked domain. Okay, well, eventually there'll be a merch store.
Parked domain.
Is there a different URL we can give to people?
No. We would have to buy a different URL.
Oh, it doesn't have like a .com/. I see.
I wish it did.
Right, well,
because then we could just use that.
Well, we're looking into it. It's unfortunately tied up in someone else's email address, and hopefully we'll have a solution to that soon.
Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. For now, we are calling time on this Tuesday. We will talk to you again on Friday. Until then, fuck capitalism. Go home.
Did we just do a 3-hour podcast?
We did.
Every time Rob said, "Here's another question," I was like, "Have you looked at the time?"
I lost track of time too. I didn't realize.
My stomach has not lost track of the timestamp.
I mean, yeah, I'm ready for lunch, but geez.
All right, let's go on. Ooh, wait. We have top of the minute in play. I know it's a little bit of a wait, but I think it's worth it. Top of the minute.
Cado can tell when they do the edit.
Yeah.
Like they can feel it.
Worth it.
Hey, do you think
Energy.
like when you scroll through like an Instagram, there's like they're always trying to pitch you on like weird tech and get like just there's weird shit they're trying to sell you on through the app. Sometimes you see weird clocks, right? And sometimes I'm like, well, those are kind of neat. And then you click on it, it's like $400. But what if I could get a time.is clock? Can I get one? Does that exist?
You're talking about a clock that's synced to...
Yeah. It's not a clock.
It would still have a delay, of course. But it could regularly pull time.is. I'm sure that's a thing.
Well, what does time.is pull from? Isn't that pulling from
the universe.
The clocks.
that is the clock of the
Clocks.com?
universe. I feel
No, I
it,
assume-
it must be syncing to like the atomic clock or whatever, right? Like some other
Right,
universal standard.
there's like a national atomic clock standard that like tons of clocks sync with, right? Like
Right.
you have those little clocks in schools that say they're like synced to atomic time.
How does time does? Well,
Okay,
how
well,
have we
my
not
watch-
asked
my-
how
my
time that is
watch
worked
is-
yet?
My watch matches time.is. But then I'm watching a line move. That's not as fun. I want like to hang next to me over here. I just want an atomic clock. That's what I want.
Time that is / about.
That is.
Time that is synchronized with an atomic clock, the most accurate time source in the world. The displayed time will normally have a precision of 0.02 to 0.1 seconds. Damn,
Wait.
a whole tenth of a second off? The precision
Wait,
depends on your
wait.
internet connection and how busy your computer is.
Wait. An atomic clock.
Yeah, it just says an atomic clock. I don't know.
What makes that? Whoa! What
Which
makes that
atomic
motherfucker
clock?
so special?
I don't fucking
Yeah,
know.
like how do I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
$25, I could between the hours of 2 and 6 have an atomic clock on my desk. Wow. Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna
Patrick,
reboot.
you're cutting in and out really badly.
Yeah, I'm gonna reboot really quick.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
And we might have to open a time that is again.
No, but then it won't be a top of the minute one. We're hanging by a thread here.
Whoa! This is the only thing keeping the team together. Is the idea of top of the minute time.is.
I don't know, by the time that Patrick gets back, it might be the next top of the
Might be-
minute. Rolling
we
back
can-
around.
We can still be safe, yeah.
Speaking of keeping things in sync, I had the most King of Executive Function moment the other day. Like, this is all time for me.
Hit me.
I was prepping. I was making dinner, and there were a couple things that had like ideally you want them to come up together. And I put the last thing in the microwave. I start the timer, and I look down at the oven timer. I look back up at the microwave timer for all the dishes. They are exactly synced to the second. What is coming out of the oven is going to come out at the exact moment the microwave beeps, and the meal is complete.
Incredible. So strong.
Wow, you did it. I did like
Truly.
the opposite of that and started dinner way too late for when we wanted to eat.
Well, Cado, that's the classic. That is the classic move. That's usually me. But during my reign as King of Executive Function, I do things like we are going to eat at 7:30, and it turns out that means like, well, it wasn't exactly 7:30, but it does mean that like at 7:34 or whatever, the meal came up exactly on time.
Amazing. Wow.
But no, we are no strangers to Rob is going to make a dinner for us, and that dinner arrives at like optimistically 9:30, but there have definitely been times where I'm like, well, it'll be done at 10:15. It'll be good, but it will be late.
Yeah.
I'm the expert at like missing an entire step where it's like, and then this has to braise slowly for an hour, and I will just like not clock that hour is in there.
Yeah. Also, prep time, like estimates on recipes, total bullshit. None of them are real.
They've even admitted, like I think recipe makers have admitted they do this because otherwise nobody would make the recipes.
Sure.
They're
yeah,
lying motherfuckers. You
God
know what?
damn it.
No. I do think that like there are some things where it's like this is what if there was a robot following
Yes.
these exact instructions,
Right.
this would be the amount of time that it would take.
Yeah.
Which like that's not you.
No.
Well, see,
That's not you. If you had a sous chef, maybe.
it's like, how good are you at like knife prep? And the answer for me is I'm not. Like, there's at no point in my life have I ever sat down and be like, I'm gonna chop like 100 green peppers and 100 onions, just to, like really get my techniques down. That ain't me.
I have a specific, and sometimes they'll separate prep time and stuff. So, it's like, oh, maybe prep time will take you longer because you chop slower. But once you're in the cook, it'll take X amount of time. Mine is like a little bit. This is worse, and I should have noticed. Honestly, I got like a pre-made packet of like enchilada sauce, and on the back it has the recipe like grab a pound of chicken breast and we'll walk you through how to make some chicken enchiladas. Great. There's a little like punch out like starburst that says 35-minute cook, like done in 35 minutes. What they when you read through it and notice it says that you're boiling some water, which like immediately adds to the time. What they didn't add to their time. Then you're cooking the chicken for 15 minutes in the boiling water. The 15 minutes, and then you're putting together the enchiladas, and then you're baking for 20 minutes. So they just took the 2 times, the 20-minute bake and the 15-minute cook, and put that together. But all the other steps in between take time. There's no way you're getting out in 35 minutes.
Yep. Yeah, I've done like the meal prep like kits for years, and it's just a constant judging of me on every meal. It's like, this is a quick one, 25 minutes. Like an hour and 10 minutes later, I'm serving it. And it's just like I feel like shit at the end of every meal. Like the meals are terrific. Like I've really enjoyed that process, but I was like, can you just say like short, medium, long, as opposed to putting a specific goddamn time on it, and I'll figure out what that means for my life.
I had to give up on we used to get this one from, I don't know, it was like one of those meal prep kits. It was like from like organic farms in like Georgia or whatever. It was like something pizza. Either way, it did that thing. And I had to give up on it when my track record of getting these done in a reasonable time frame was so bad that there started to be multiple days where it was like the meal prep kit was sitting there. And I was like, we could just click a few buttons and have Chinese food show up.
Okay, I never got that. I'm just going from 30 minutes to an hour. Rob's stretching a meal over 3 days. Like, I still got to get through those peppers.
I'm in a weird position right now because I spend most nights with my girlfriend, but we do not live together, and her job frequently keeps her between 1 and 3 hours late every single fucking day. And so I have no goddamn clue when she's going to start heading home. And so like, I'm not going to fucking cook at 8:30 p.m. in an apartment that isn't mine. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you comedy joking me?
Are you hiding from people still too?
Janae doesn't come out of her fucking room. I'm not doing that. I'm not.
That's too late to start a meal for sure. No matter what.
And that's
maybe you can get like a box of mac and cheese down real quick, but even then.
Or like a quesadilla. Mm-hmm. But like that's not a meal.
I beg to differ.
But that's a struggle.
Sorry, you're right. You're right, Ren. You're correct. A quesadilla is not a dinner. Quesadillas is dinner.
Well, Rob, how are you defining quesadillas?
Well, you got your burrito sized tortillas. You got a big skillet. And then you fill that quesadilla with the cheese and meats and toppings of your dreams.
Nope. Already gone beyond.
Yeah.
already gone beyond.
You
what's
gotta cut
here,
meat
Rob.
and veggies and things
meat,
to go with. That's
veggie,
not. That's prep.
None of that shit's in here. No, this is a struggle meal, Rob.
Cheese.
I want to be real.
That's just you're calling it a quesadilla. You just wanted to eat cheese.
That's what it is. It's literally in the name.
Yeah, that is what those words mean, Patrick. First of all,
you know what? I saw some tweets earlier this week that said, "I don't deserve strep throat because I am not a child."
We're ready to go.
Let's go. That's the energy we need. We're ready to start this podcast. But we also have to do time.is a second time because I had to record.
Fuck! I knew this would happen.
I'm so mad. I spent. I was so fucking domestic this week. I did so much shit around the home. Oh.
All right, let's go on 45.
All right.
Wow. Not even a whole number.
No way. Rob's
A great fraction.
No, a 5 is a whole number.
A great fraction.
A 5 is a whole number to me.
It is. Yeah. What's the word I'm looking for? A 0. I just wanted a 0 at the end, right? To emulate the top of the minute energy.
No, 5 is the top of the minute energy. Like I think
agree.
it's like 5s and 0s. 5s and 0s are the same thing to me.
5's a half something. No.
Yeah, and a half, 2 halves makes a whole, and so that makes it a whole. Because 2 holes also makes a whole.
All right, let's
Amazing.
dig into it.
Well, that's how you make a hole.
Perfect. Thank you. now let's dig deeper.